Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto comes back stronger part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Northern Fire Country, 3 weeks into the training trip with Jiraiya. So, you're saying that for ninja every conversation is like a battle? Naruto frowned in thought as he trudged up the steep mountain road. That can't be right. What about friends and stuff? The clone behind him was too busy trying to make a Rasengan to join the conversation. He was finally getting the hang of doing it with 2 hands instead of 4, but it still took all his concentration. Jiraiya chuckled and adjusted his pack. You spar with your friends, don't you? Besides, half your friends are girls, and a conversation with them is always a battle. Or haven't you figured out yet that when a girl starts talking to you about nothing in particular, she's challenging you to make her like you? You really are obsessed with that perverted stuff, aren't you? Yeah, and everyone knows it, kid. So you know what foreign kages do when they want to manipulate me? They send their hottest kunoichi babes to seduce me into going along with their plans. Oh, the horror! The agony! Maybe I should learn to overcome my weakness, so they'll send assassins after me instead? Naruto peered up at the Sannin suspiciously. You're saying it's all an act? I don't think I'm buying that. Heh. Maybe it is, and maybe it isn't. Maybe I'm just a hopeless lecher, but sometimes I manage to control my impulses. Maybe it's all an act, and I let them get their way on little things so they'll be surprised when it doesn't work on something important. Oh, here's a good one. Maybe I'm secretly a master of perverted mind control techniques, and I lure Konoha's enemies into sending me their best kunoichi so I can turn them to my side. My point, kid, is that elite ninja are constantly playing mind games like that about everything. Of course we all know about the game, so we're always trying to figure out what the other guy is really up to without giving away our own ploys. Among friends it's just another kind of practice, but when foreign ninja are involved it can be deadly serious. So when someone from Konoha waves an obvious weakness or mystery or inconsistency in front of your face, that's like inviting you to spar with them. It takes a lot of work to get good enough to fool other ninja for long, and the best way to get there is to practice with your comrades. Wow! Naruto dashed in front of the older ninja, hopping excitedly. So, you're saying if Kakashi-sensei is always late it's like he's inviting us to try to spy on him, or get him in trouble for it? Yep. Good luck finding him, though, and he's usually got his ass covered. What about when Hinata turns red and does that weird fainting thing? Jiraiya snickered. She's got a secret you should be trying to figure out. What about when Sakura hits me for asking her out? Ah, that's the greatest game of all. Think of it this way, trying to get a girl to like you is like challenging her to a duel. If you lose, she rejects you. Fight to a draw and you get to go on dates, kiss, hold hands, that kind of thing. Win and she'll fall for you. On that scale, what you do with Sakura is like challenging Sasuke to a grudge match and then knocking yourself out on a tree branch before you even step in the ring. Ouch. The genin replied. Brutal, but true, commented the clone. She won't even talk to us. Well, who knows, maybe one of these days you'll find an expert on women who's willing to train you. Now, I've told you all this straight out because it's pretty obvious you didn't have a clue what was going on, but don't expect me to be so obvious next time. You're supposed to be learning to figure this stuff out on your own, you know. I am? Huh. Well, okay, I just never thought about it like that before. Okay, Pervy-sensei, I'll try to pay more attention to this verbal sparring stuff. The trio continued up the trail for some miles, both lost in thought. Finally the trail leveled out, and they stopped for lunch. Hey, Jiraiya, can you show me another move to practice while we walk? The Rasengan is cool, but doing the same thing all day gets old after a while. Teach me this, show me that, nag, nag, nag. We don't have time for training today, kid. I've got to get to that hot spring resort before the bikini festival starts. You never know, they might need another judge. The toad sage drifted off into daydreams while rummaging around in his pack. Naruto opened his mouth to complain and stopped, frozen, as an expression of dawning realization appeared on his face. He looked at the clone, who shrugged. Looked back at the toad sage, who was now flipping through a black-bound notebook. Blinked. Grinned. A moment later a half-dozen buxom blonde kunoichi filled the clearing, dressed in a considerably abbreviated version of Naruto's usual orange jumpsuit. Oh, Jiraiya-sama! They chorused. Please teach us something. Ha! Now that's what I'm talking about, kiddo! Wave country coastline, for months on the road. A dozen orange-clad clones of both sexes darted among the moonlit breakers in an endless game of Rasengan tag, dodging and striking with the lightning speed of the heavenly fist taijutsu style. Two more observed their antics, occasionally calling up fresh clones to replace the inevitable casualties. The original sat under a tree 20 yards inland, apparently meditating, while ominous wisps of deadly red chakra wove lazily through the air around him. If the seal breaks, I die. If I die, you get dragged to hell with me. So I guess we're stuck with each other. In a dank cave that existed only in Naruto's mind, the nine-tailed fox peered down through the bars of its prison. I was old before your kind came down from the trees, idiot child, and I have no intention of dying in this irritating little trap. Yeah, whatever. The young ninja crossed his arms and glared up at the demonic beast. If you're so anxious to live, don't be so stingy when I need to use your chakra. Use too much and it will poison you, little fool. Human bodies aren't made to channel Yuki. You've only survived this long because of your little healing talent, and it has its limits. Yeah, what's up with that anyway? I always wondered if it was something you were doing, or if I had some kind of bloodline power. Of course it's a bloodline, idiot. A remnant of the perfect health of the Elder Kami, in fact. No doubt some distant ancestor of yours was one of their playthings. Hey! The fox chuckled. You should be grateful, brat. Without that power my Yuki would have burned you to ash the first time you called on it. As it is, most of your power is consumed merely surviving the contamination that leaks through the seal. Really? So if I quit using your chakra I'd heal even faster? How fast are we talking here? Fast enough to give you perfect health, and repair any injury that isn't instantly lethal in a matter of minutes. Who knows, it might even cure whatever affliction makes you so stupid. The QB replied. But it isn't that easy. The seal constantly steals bits of my power and forces them into your chakra circulatory system. You'd have to modify the seal, or block the energy flow somehow. I bet I could talk Pervy-sensei into doing that if I work at it. Naruto gazed up at the bars of the prison speculatively. Yeah, let him think I came up with this myself, and just want to test it out. Then when it works we'll just leave it running. Yes. The QB thought to itself. Perfect health includes old age, silly monkey, so no natural death for you. Give me a century to work at it without my chakra being stolen, and even this seal will eventually break. A hotel in Wind Country, 8 months on the road. Naruto marshaled his chakra, carefully forming the odd seal Jiraiya had described earlier that day, and pressed home his attack. But his clone met him head-on, resisting the allegedly devastating technique without apparent effort. Maybe he wasn't doing it right? He adjusted his technique as he grappled with her, trying to find the right pattern. This jutsu wasn't nearly as complicated as Rasengan, but getting it right based on just a verbal description was tough. Should he use less chakra? More? Maybe a lot more? The clone shuddered, and for a second he thought he'd gotten it. Then she took advantage of his distraction to flip him over on the bed and straddle him. MMMP. He was so startled he dropped the technique. She broke the kiss and pulled away, but she was still sitting on him. Her breasts shifted beneath her loose nightgown as she moved, and Naruto suddenly found himself noticing just how beautiful his sexy form was. Kissing a guy is really weird, she commented. I feel like I should hate it, but I don't think I do, but I think I'd be freaking out if I was a guy right now. Are you sure you won't go girl for this? I'm not sure I want to learn this stupid kiss of surrender technique at all. What are you doing anyway? She blushed. I don't know. I just at first it didn't do anything, but then you changed something, and bam! I couldn't help it, I just had to kiss you back. So instead of surrendering, it makes you attack me? That's stupid. Well, you know he isn't going to teach us that wind edge thing until we get this right, so we'd better give it another try. She let the boy up with a nervous grin. Okay, but I think I am gonna go girl. You're making me worry about what kind of memories you're gonna give me when this is done. Good call. Another 10 minutes of chakra-laced kisses brought them no closer to the instant surrender effect Jiraiya claimed this technique was for, but Naruto was discovering that kissing a sexy girl is a lot of fun even if she's really you. He also noted that the technique did seem to be having some kind of effect on his clone. Are you okay? The original asked. You look like Hinata did that time I checked her temperature with my forehead. If this is what Hinata was feeling, I'm sorry we ignored her all those years. The clone giggled. I feel like that time we accidentally saw Sakura bathing, but about 100 times stronger. Still more likely to pin you down and kiss you senseless than surrender though. Naruto stared at the clone. I have no idea what to say to that, so I'm just going to ignore it, okay? The clone giggled again. Huh. Anyway, this kinda sucks. I can feel my chakra going out, but it's like there's some kind of barrier stopping it, and I can't push through. Push through? The clone shot up, suddenly alert. No, don't do that. I don't think that would work, and if it did, you'd probably pop me. I think there's more rhythm to it. Go soft at first, and kind of push and pull and swirl around the right way, and then I open up and you just push right into me, and oh god, I sound like one of Pervo-sensei's books, don't I? She looked so dismayed that Naruto had to laugh. Hey, no sweat. The cool thing about talking to yourself is you don't have to get embarrassed, right? But I've got no idea what you're trying to say. Damn. Sorry, I just can't figure out how to put it in words. Hey, I know. I'll just pop myself, and then I won't have to explain it because you'll already know. Naruto was momentarily stunned by the flood of memories she received as the clone dismissed herself. She also wasn't sure it was going to help, since it wasn't at all obvious what the connection was between her chakra manipulations and the sensations her victim felt. So she summoned a fresh clone, and tried again. She had more than enough chakra to dispel and reform the clone after every experiment, which was almost as good as being able to feel both sides of the experience at once. It wasn't long before she started to get a handle on which sensation went with which kind of chakra flow. There was a subtle feedback in the interaction of their auras, and she was learning to read it. Her clone's chakra was definitely responding to the technique. Flowing, pulsing, pushing and pulling. MMMPH. The clone clutched frantically at her shoulders, pressing their firm breasts together, as she trembled and moaned in her maker's arms. A moment later she collapsed, nearly falling off the bed before Naruto caught her. Hey, was that it? Did it work? Naruto observed his clone's apparent helplessness excitedly. Oh god. That was I don't know what the heck that was, but wow. Now I understand why he called this the knockout technique no kunoichi would want to resist. Do it again? Please? Naruto laughed. What, you like being helpless? The clone squirmed. No. But it feels so damned good. I never thought anything could feel like that. Please do me again before you pop me. Okay. I guess I do need to practice. Snow Country, 12 months on the road. The blonde Jinchuriki perched atop a rocky peak overlooking miles of desolate glacier. The howling blizzard had long since driven all sensible folk indoors for the night, but Naruto was never one to let a little weather get in the way of training. Chakra kept his feet firmly stuck to the massive boulder that formed the mountain summit, while more chakra formed a visible aura of power around him that blunted the force of the wind and kept the bitter cold at bay. This time for sure! He cried, once more forming a slight variation on the familiar set of seals. Hundreds of chakra tendrils leaked out into the storm, merging with the winds, forming a vortex of elemental power that swirled furiously around the young ninja. Wind Clone Technique. A massive surge of chakra flowed into the vortex as he completed the experimental technique, and it collapsed into a humanoid form. It wavered for a moment, and dissolved into the unmistakable figure of his female alter ego. Naked, of course. It worked. Naruto jumped in excitement, remembering too late where he was. A hurricane-force blast of snow-laden wind blew him right off the mountain peak. The girl giggled. Two knives sheathed in wind chakra flew out of the darkness to sink hill-deep in the weathered granite, trailing combat wire that immediately went taut. A moment later Naruto reappeared, climbing hand over hand down the wires until he finally got within arm's reach of the ground. He slapped a hand down to stick to the stone, and pulled himself prone. The girl broke into laughter, a clear sound like chiming bells. She stood lightly, unanchored, her long hair whipping furiously in the wind. Okay, that was dumb, Naruto admitted, climbing to his feet as he renewed his protective cocoon. He took his first real look at the clone, and frowned. You aren't really me, are you? Oh, is that what you were trying to do? The girl replied. Boy, did you mess that one up. No, silly, I'm Cereza of the Biting Frost. That tickling you were doing earlier got my attention, and then you made this cool chakra wind chime thing and I just had to try it out. She looked at her hands curiously, curling her fingers as if trying to figure out what they were for. The old Naruto would have been flummoxed. But the months of practice were finally teaching him how to pay attention, and he'd always been good at thinking on his feet. I'm Naruto. I don't know much about the spirit world. Are you saying you're some kind of wind spirit? She grinned. You could say that. All this, she made a sweeping gesture taking in the whole of the sky, is me. But I paint the mountains all the time. I've never been in a mortal form before. She looked down at herself, pushing her breasts aside for a better view. It's strange, but kind of neat. Well, tell you what. If you can help me figure out what's wrong with my technique, I'll keep that body running for a few days so you can play around with it. It's probably pretty fragile, but I think I can reform it for you if it gets dispelled. Really? That sounds like fun. But if you're a bargainer, don't you want a big contract written in blood with rules and penalties and stuff? Now Naruto laughed. I'm not that kind of guy. I just like to do stuff for my friends, and sometimes they do things for me. Would you like to be friends, Sarah-chan? She eyed him speculatively. There's something about this man, he has the spark. He might be a kami someday. And that grouchy old fox is sealed in him, how odd. I bet he'll have lots of interesting stories. Sure. Wave Country, 18 months on the road. Naruto surveyed the improvised training grounds with a satisfied smile. Normally he kept his clone use Loki to avoid attracting attention, but this island was remote enough that there wasn't much chance of visitors. So today, nearly 100 clones swarmed over the area. Some practiced taijutsu, both singly and in teams. Their movements were fast and precise, but the wind clones stood out from their shadow clone brothers by virtue of their inhuman speed. Some still practiced barehanded, but these days most fought with combat knives sheathed in wind chakra. Others drilled with thrown weapons. He'd long since mastered kunai and shuriken, and using combat wire to guide them wasn't much harder. But he'd found out about chakra strings a couple of months ago, and he was still mastering the art of directing his weapons with them. A surprisingly large group studied seals, working their way through the scrolls on exploding tags and storage seals Jiraiya had lent him. A few adventurous clones played with ideas for original seals, but these were well away from the main training ground. There were a million ways to get a seal wrong, and his efforts were still more likely to explode than do anything useful. The contingent doing ninjutsu drills were by far the biggest chakra drain, but he'd long since concluded that they were essential. Sparring with Jiraiya had taught him that any jutsu that takes more than a second is useless against a serious foe, and his growing jutsu repertoire was a big part of his fighting style. So he drilled relentlessly, working to make his new wind techniques as fast as his Rasengan and Shadow clone. A girl clone wandered by with a Rasengan in each hand and a leaf balanced on her nose, and he grimaced. Chakra control drills were boring as heck, but even after all this time his control still needed work. Jiraiya called it pretty good, but he needed to be a lot better if he was ever going to learn medical techniques. A package of new memories surfaced, courtesy of a clone on the other side of the island, and his smile returned. New techniques were his favorite kind of training, and he had 3 of them in progress. The self-sustaining clone idea wasn't going very well, but his memory clone idea was working perfectly. Why waste chakra creating and dispelling a whole clone if all he wanted to do was send himself a message? Just clone the memories you want, and send them over the link directly. The rumble of a distant detonation echoed through the trees, and the memories of a recently exploded clone arrived. Okay, so combining Rasengan with wind chakra is going to be tough. That's okay, I've got plenty of time to work on it. Jiraiya said he'd need a week or 2 to infiltrate that Kunoichi cell and pump them for information. Too much information, one of his clones called. Don't want to think about how the old pervert does it. Yeah? Old people naked. Ick. Jiraiya claimed that his perverted techniques were the best, but Naruto wasn't too impressed. His girl self always complained they were about as subtle as being hit on the head with a hammer. His own variants were a lot more fun, thanks to his liberal use of gender-switched clones to feel both sides of the experience while experimenting, but he wasn't about to admit to the old man that he was inventing new hentai jutsu techniques. Bad enough his girl clones had such a tendency to sneak off and play with each other, but at least they were careful not to get caught. If word ever got back to Sakura or Tsunade, they'd probably murder him for real. Mind you, he wasn't scared enough to actually stop. He had a half-dozen girl clones hidden discreetly away at that very moment, trying to figure out how to turn Jiraiya's seductive massage technique into something that was actually fun. That was half the reason he wanted self-sustaining clones, so they could sneak off for long periods of time to look for information or practice secret techniques without anyone knowing. He shook his head, and pulled his attention back to training. Anyway, call it 10 days with the old pervert gone. With 100 clones at a time, that's 3 years of training. Plenty of time to get a couple of new techniques working, and get all this new wind stuff polished up right. Those Akatsuki guys will never know what hit them. Somewhere in the deserts of Wind Country, 2 years on the road. Jiraiya was off on another research mission, leaving his apprentice to his own devices for the evening. Most nights of late this would have been Naruto's cue to go girl and call up a few clones for his own private research, but not tonight. There was only one clone keeping the young Jinchuriki company at the moment, and although she was in sexy form they were both fully clothed. 2 years since we left Konoha. The real Naruto commented. The desert winds howled through the rocks around them, carrying blasts of sand and grit. The clone huddled further into the sheltered hollow where they sat. We'll be ready soon, she replied. We're already tougher than most jounin, even without the fox. I know. But we can't screw this up. Once we come back, those Akatsuki guys will be able to find us, and they're monsters. If we're going to protect our precious people, we need to be even stronger. The girl clone leaned back against his chest. Who are our precious people, brother? Not the villagers, that's for sure. Sasuke? Not unless we're going to join the snake freak to be with him. Sakura? I love her as much as you do, but we both know now that she hates us. Hey, now, don't be like that. His arms went around the troubled girl in a gentle hug. We've still got plenty of precious people left, and you know I'm not ready to give up on Team 7. What's got you so down? I don't know. Maybe that plan to keep me like this until I start thinking like a girl is working. It's been nearly a month now since you made me, and I have been feeling kind of weird lately. I'm so lonely. Brother, she looked up at him with pleading eyes. Promise me we won't be alone forever. That when we get back you'll find us a girl. I still think Hinata might really like us. Or if not her, or Sakura, there's got to be someone else. Promise me you'll keep looking until you find her? He sighed. I'll try, Sexy-chan. I'll try. But you know I can't just make a girl like us, no matter what Pervo-sensei says. Maybe not, but I bet a lot of girls would put up with us for those S-rank massages of ours. She sniffed. Look, I know it won't be easy, but we can't just give up. I can't go on like this forever. We won't have to. You're right, there's got to be a girl for us somewhere. I promise, I won't stop looking until I find her. Believe it! The last was said with a cheesy grin and an exaggerated nice guy pose. The clone giggled. Thanks. Sorry about getting so moody. No problem. Now, I was trying to figure out what else we need to learn before we can go home. Oh, yeah? Well, how about some kind of wide area jutsu like Temari's Wind Blast? Tsunade hated mornings. Especially the morning after a night spent drinking and gambling, though she seldom had the opportunity for that since becoming Hokage. But staring at the endless piles of paperwork covering her desk, she reflected that a hangover and an empty purse might well be an improvement. At least I'd be having fun, she grumbled. Did you say something, sensei? Sakura asked. The teenage kunoichi had been fluttering about the office since dawn, filing and organizing with disgusting good cheer. Never mind. What are you so happy about anyway? What do you mean? It's spring, it's a beautiful day, and we haven't had a crisis in over a week. Why wouldn't I be happy? Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Oh, all right, Sakura relented. I'm also glad that Naruto's finally coming home. I can't wait to show him how much stronger I've gotten, she gloated to herself. The first time we spar, I'm going to kick his ass just for old time's sake, and then he'll never mistake me for that weak little girl I used to be. I thought so. Well, your boy toy won't be here for a few days yet, so try to contain yourself. Sakura sputtered, ignoring a knock at the door. Hey! It's not like that, sensei. Naruto and I are just old teammates. You know Sasuke's the one I want. The door swung open, and a voice observed, then I guess I'd better hurry up and drag his sorry ass back here for you, huh? Sakura gasped, and spun to face the door. Naruto? In the flesh, the orange-clad ninja grinned. At least, I think I'm the real one. He stepped into the room, and the girl had just enough time to notice how tall he'd grown before he swept her off her feet and spun her around in an exuberant hug. It's good to see you, Sakura, Naruto exclaimed. His chakra surrounded her in an invisible blanket of power, automatically caressing her smaller aura in a technique he called affectionate embrace. Naruto knew intellectually that having a higher chakra level than your target could make intimate techniques a lot more effective, but as he'd only tried them on his own clones, he failed to anticipate what this meant in practice. As he set her down, Sakura sighed happily and melted into his arms, her usual embarrassment over public displays of affection completely forgotten. Oh, Naruto, she murmured. Welcome back. Wow, he thought. Sakura's even hotter than before. Firm young breasts pressed into his chest as she squirmed slightly against him. Then she looked up to meet his eyes, and for a split second he thought she was going to kiss him. Tsunade cleared her throat. Should I give you two some time alone? Sakura blushed furiously, and practically teleported across the room. No, of course not. My god, the young kunoichi thought. When did Naruto get so hot? I've got to get me some of that. I wonder if he's still got that thing for me? Sakura firmly squelched that line of thought as she searched for a distraction to hide her embarrassment. Tsunade, Naruto obliged by leaning over the desk to hug the older woman. This time he carefully suppressed his aura, thanks to years of Jiraiya's stories about how the slug sage despised perverted jutsu. Not that Naruto saw anything especially perverted about the technique, but better safe than sorry. Welcome back, kiddo. She smiled at him, her bad mood forgotten. You must have made good time. I wasn't expecting you for a couple of days yet. Oh, I just flew in this morning. He tried to be blasé, but couldn't completely keep the pride out of his voice. Jiraiya's too paranoid to ride on my fans, so he's coming the slow way. I left a couple of clones with him to make sure he actually shows up. Humph. Well, I can see that his reports on your training weren't completely exaggerated, at least. I'd planned on setting up an evaluation match for you, but I'm afraid your opponent just got back from a rough mission. Yeah, I know. You've had to work the Jounin pretty hard lately, between all the intrigue in the kingdom and that border trouble with Stone. He noted her expression and chuckled. Hey, Jiraiya's been teaching me infiltration for years, remember? I figured the best place to start practicing would be at home. But that's impossible. Sakura interjected. You haven't been here in person, and I know you couldn't have used shadow clones. They only last a few hours at most, and they can't go more than a mile or two from their maker. Naruto nodded. Sure, you're absolutely right, Sakura. I must be confused or something. We all know what a dummy I am, right? He assumed a befuddled expression and scratched his head. Oh, yeah? I guess it must have been a dream. Hey, I'm hungry. You got any ramen? He looked the pinkette over hopefully, as if she might have a bowl or two in her shuriken pouch. Sakura giggled and swatted him. Oh, you. Quite that. Annoyed as she was at the implication that he'd infiltrated Konoha deeply enough to collect information on recent mission results, Tsunade was suddenly reminded of how much more effective Jiraiya's information network had become in the last year. If Naruto could really maintain clones in another city and had the wind mastery to pull off A-rank flight techniques, and she could see for herself that his chakra reserves were monstrously huge, more like a bijou than anything human, and he'd obviously grown up quite a bit as well. Alright, Naruto, I've decided. Since I don't have anyone available to test you right now, I'll just have to do it myself. The fact that it got her out of doing paperwork for an hour or two was beside the point. Really. As expected, Training Ground 16 was empty when they arrived. Sakura and Shizen edged away as they reached the clearing, not wanting to be too close to the impending battle. Alright, Naruto, we're going to do your typical bell test here. Tsunade held up a single bell and tied it around her neck. It promptly vanished into her massive cleavage, leaving only the thin string it hung from visible. Now, I don't want you to hold back. If you don't come at me with everything you've got, I'm going to get pissed off, and believe me when I say you don't want that. Naruto raised a hand. Does that have to include hentai jutsu attacks? Because Jiraiya always said you'd murder anyone who tried one on you, and considering what his stuff feels like, I don't blame you. But I don't want you to think I'm holding back just because you never see me use one. Tsunade started to reply, then frowned dangerously and crossed her arms. Naruto, how exactly do you know what it feels like to be the target of those techniques? Did you ever read the old man's file on what my sexy technique really does? She shook her head. He sighed and looked away. Short version, it's a real transformation, not an illusion, physical and mental. And Pervo-sensei insisted I had to learn that stuff, but I wasn't about to practice something like orchid bows to the storm on some strange civilian girl. He blushed and kicked a clod of dirt. Anyway, I know you're probably immune, but I've got such a stupidly high chakra level it might make sense to try something anyway. But that would be really creepy since you're kinda the closest thing I've got to a mom. Naruto half expected the volatile Sannin to blow up at him for bringing up such a perverted topic, but instead she actually looked sympathetic. Don't sweat it, kiddo. Just stick with actual combat techniques. Although, do you know the counters for those damned pressure point techniques Orochimaru used to collect? He nodded. Interesting. Okay, we'll save that for later. She stepped back, checked the bell, and resumed her stance. Okay, let's get this show on the road. Ready? Go! Heh. Okay, Granny. Prepare to loose. He stepped back and made a single seal. Ninja Clone Squad. Instead of identical clones, the technique produced what looked for all the world like a typical Chunin team, a leader in his early 20s, plus a pair of teenage boys and a girl the same age. The kunoichi's scanty attire suggested an infiltration or genjutsu specialist, while the rest bore a varied assortment of swords, knives, and combat wire. Cute. Tsunade chuckled. You ain't seen nothing yet. Ninja team replication. The 4 clones became 40, in groups of 4 spaced widely about the clearing. An instant later the closest 2 groups leaped to attack while the more distant ones faded into the trees, and the fight was on. Tsunade immediately discovered that these clones were more than just diversions. They fought with perfect coordination and Jounin-level taijutsu skills, dodging her attacks with preternatural speed that had to be some kind of wind jutsu. One member of each team used Rasengan, which wasn't too unexpected, but another used Blade Sheath and Wind Chakra while the girls threw kunai on chakra strings. Correction, she noted as she narrowly avoided a cluster of flying blades. The girls used airborne kunai as puppets. A blade for every finger, that's pretty damned good for someone who wasn't trained in Suna. Time to get some breathing room. Tsunade leapt over a pair of attacking clones, twisted out of the way of a chakra-sheathed sword blade, and cut a half-dozen chakra strings with a wave of one hand as she drew a kunai with the other. Then she ducked low and slammed a super-powered fist into the ground, shattering the earth in a 40-foot radius and thrusting hundreds of jagged stones into the air. Not a single clone was dispelled. The boys leaped into the air before the shockwave could reach them, the girls wove gracefully through the newly formed obstacle course, and the adults simply smashed anything that threatened them with Rasengans. Okay then, I guess the kid learned how to dodge. I'll have to step it up a bit. As the Kunoichi clones closed back into striking range, she unleashed a barrage of Saban needles disguised by a genjutsu of an even bigger barrage. 6 clones puffed out of existence as the needles struck, although she noted with surprise that the other 2 she'd targeted actually evaded her attack. An instant later, her highly trained nose picked out the barely detectable scent of knockout gas. Shit! She thought. How? The clones? How do you make a clone out of knockout gas? She body flickered to a nearby tree to escape the barely visible cloud. There was an exploding tag stuck to the trunk next to her landing spot. She flickered away again as it detonated, arriving at a more distant tree. Another clone team was waiting there. To hell with this, she thought, and smashed the tree with a supercharged fist. It exploded into a mass of flying debris that dispelled 3 of the clones, and gave her a few seconds of cover to take an antidote. Naruto probably wouldn't try poison twice against a medic nin of her level, but it never hurt to make sure. She landed lightly, noting with approval that the Kunoichi clone had actually managed to dodge everything and was standing on another tree making seals. Typhoon Dragon. The explosion of wind blasted the slug Sannin through 2 trees and back into the clearing, where she rolled to her feet just in time to spot a clone descending on her with a Rasengan the size of a beach ball in his hand. She did a substitution, but even from 20 yards away the blast from that impact blew her back off her feet and pelted her with a hail of shrapnel that would have shredded most ninja. That was the pattern for the next 15 minutes. Fast as the clones were, Tsunade was even faster, and she picked them off steadily. But the supply of opponents was endless, and they took advantage of their numbers to prepare traps and ambushes while keeping her too hard-pressed to do the same. She was spending chakra like water just keeping up this pace, and Naruto showed no sign of tiring. He's got to be burning chakra 10 times as fast as I am, she thought, but damned if he isn't outlasting me anyway. Then she punched a clone, and it exploded. The blast popped the rest of her current attackers. 2 of them blew up as well, producing a fireball that filled half the clearing. As the smoke cleared, Tsunade staggered back to her feet, punch-drunk and frantically extinguishing her smoldering clothes, to discover a single grinning Naruto approaching her. That's 1 kill, Granny. I could have made the blast 10 times that size. Give up yet? Like hell I will, she growled. But crap, a blast that big would have blown my arm off. As it is, my right hand's nearly useless until I get a chance to heal it. Then the remaining wisps of smoke coalesced into a female shape, which wrapped an arm around Naruto's shoulders and handed him the bell. What the hell? Frantically looking down, Tsunade confirmed that she'd lost the bell somewhere along the way. Thanks, Sira-chan, Naruto exclaimed as he took it. Good thing you used string instead of ninja wire, Granny. Okay, kiddo, I guess you won that round, Tsunade grumbled, but secretly she was pleased. Damn, the kid's gotten good. But if he's fighting at this level, just reforming Team 7 won't work. Hell, he's tougher than Kakashi now, and almost as tricky. What the hell is that anyway? She went on. Another new clone variant, or some kid of summon? Oh, this is my friend Cereza. She's a Northern Gale, but she likes to hang out with humans sometimes, so we've got a deal that she'll let me summon her if I make soulless clones for her to posses. A Storm Kami? Well, I suppose you are at that level now, but be careful. High-level spirits can be a real bitch to deal with if you piss them off. Cereza smirked. Silly ninja girl, Naruto can summon me anytime. I haven't had this much fun since Tolta went wandering. With that, the strange girl dispersed back into smoke and disappeared. Tsunade chuckled. Well, someone likes you. Good job, kiddo. After a performance like that, I'll have to take a close look at the team assignments to figure out where to put you. Why don't you take the rest of the day off, and come by my office in the morning? Sure thing, Tsunade. I can't wait to see everyone again. Shizen and Sakura cautiously approached the scene, and he turned to greet them. Hey Sakura, I won. Want to have lunch with me to celebrate? Sure, Naruto. But you're buying. Hey, does that make this a date? Naruto thought to himself. Nah, this is Sakura. She's just mooching off me because she knows I'll let her. Ah well, it's worth it. No problem, Sakura-chan. They'd run into Shikamaru and Temari on the way, and the pair, who stridently denied being a couple, had somehow invited themselves along. Naruto didn't mind since it gave him a chance to catch up with old acquaintances. Congratulations on making jounin, Temari. Man, I can't believe I'm the only one from our year who's still a genin. Yeah, like I really believe that, the Sand Kunoichi replied dryly. You survive 2 fights with S-rank missing nin, serve a 3-year apprenticeship under a Sannin, and the minute you get back the Hokage has to evaluate your skills personally, but you're just some random genin. You guys don't really think anyone is buying this, do you? Hey, it's true, Sakura insisted. He was only here for 1 Chunin exam, and the council didn't approve him for promotion. So? Can't Sannin do field promotions? Or the Hokage, for that matter? Actually, no, Shikamaru answered. It's a troublesome situation. The 3rd Hokage let the council take on a strong advisory role on promotions 20 years ago, and they'd become entrenched. There are only a few ways around them. Bring a major new bloodline into the village, be a clan heir and have your elder sponsor you, or be an ANBU during a war and get promoted by the Hokage. Naruto recited. Not gonna happen, and those old fossils will never vote for me. But don't worry, I've got an angle. Temari would have pressed for details, but the group was interrupted by an ambush from a side street. Aha! I found you, boss. Now, prepare to feel the power of my ultimate jutsu. Sexy technique. Naruto turned just in time to get an eye full as Konohamaru transformed into a curvaceous brunette clothed only in a few strategically placed wisps of smoke. The younger genin held the technique for a few seconds before returning to his normal self. Get a load of that. Packed some real oomph, didn't it? The short genin's teammates cringed in embarrassment. Temari seemed vaguely amused, and Shikamaru was carefully looking elsewhere, but Sakura growled and clenched her fist. Naruto chuckled and put a hand on her shoulder. No need for that, now. You know Konohamaru, I'm not a kid anymore. I don't rely on techniques like that, and you shouldn't either. Oh, Sakura thought. He really has matured. This is much more effective. With a casual hand seal, Naruto was replaced by his female alter ego. But unlike the transformation he'd used as a kid, this time there was no noise or smoke to draw attention to the technique. He just blurred momentarily, and changed. Girl Naruto wasn't naked, but her outfit of orange spandex shorts, black sports bra, orange half jacket, black fingerless gloves, and low black boots left little to the imagination. Sakura noted that even as a girl, Naruto was slightly taller than her, with the ultra-toned body of a serious kunoichi melee specialist. But those curves, those incredible breasts, and her hair, real girls would kill for hair like that. It fell clear to her thighs in a rippling cascade of gold that would be impossible to manage in combat, except that the way it floated made it obvious the pervert was using some kind of hair animation technique. Naruto's prettier than I am. No, he's prettier than Ino. Damn it, I'd give anything to get my hands on, to have a body like that. Her distraction lasted long enough for Naruto to call up an identical clone, and carry on his explanation. See, you can actually do a mission like this without giving yourself away, and most guys will think you're some wimpy seduction type and underestimate you. Then if you still get in trouble, you just call up a clone and hit him with the old hot twins fanservice technique. If they're still trying to kill you after that, they're gay. Oh. Unfortunately, Naruto mistook Konohamaru's wide-eyed expression for admiration, so she didn't realize her danger until Sakura's fist impacted her head. Pervert. There was a moment of rubbery resistance, and the golden-haired girl dissolved in a puff of smoke. The pinkette checked herself and looked wildly around. Gee, guess that wasn't the real me after all. The clone snickered. You but when arc? Sakura sputtered. Why did you switch yourself with a clone, Naruto? The Jinchuriki shrugged. I always do that in hazardous situations. Keeps me from getting killed in a surprise attack. So, are we good or do you need to hit me again? Sakura stared at her former teammate's relaxed expression, while a whirlwind of conflicting responses ran through her head. He thinks walking down the street with me is a dangerous mission. Is he saying he can't trust me? Well, I did try to hit him. But he deserved it, he was being a pervert. Although, I guess I did hit him pretty hard. And she's actually not dressed any worse than some of the jounin. But she makes me feel so weird. So I attack him? God, this is so confusing. Finally she hung her head. I'm sorry, Naruto. I overreacted. That technique really bothers me for some reason. Does it? Okay then, I'll try not to use it when you're around. The female clone shifted, becoming the male Naruto again, and slipped an arm around her shoulders. So lunch? Sakura shivered and leaned into the embrace as the tension flowed out of her body. Why yeah. Lunch. Okay then. See you later, Konohamaru. Gotta go. Naruto waved at the younger genin and nodded to Shikamaru, who was regarding him with an unusually focused expression. Then he headed on down the street with his former teammate in tow. Shikamaru hesitated for a long moment before following. Did he just confirm that he beat Tsunade's bell test without even being present? Yes, I think he did. But whatever that was, it was no shadow clone. So the class clown is now an S-rank ninja, and he's actually keeping quiet about it instead of bragging all over town. But why did he want to make sure I'd noticed? Troublesome. Temari laughed and dragged her not-boyfriend off to rejoin their friends. You can't be serious, Tsunade. Shizen stared at her mentor in shock. The blonde Sannin leaned back in her chair and raised an eyebrow at her assistant. Can I? Why not? Tsunade, he's only 15. Look, I can see your point about not reforming Team 7. If he's as strong as you say, it would throw off the team dynamics completely, and I'm not sure Kakashi could handle him. But that doesn't mean we have to get crazy about this. We could have him try some infiltration missions with those clones of his, or do a stint in ANBU. We could even pair him up with a Hunter Nin, if you really want to put him to the test. But Enko. Tsunade chuckled. Yeah, she's a handful. 3 team leaders hospitalized, 5 forced transfers to other teams, even 1 mental retirement. At this point no one else in the village will take her, so she's stuck with solo missions and assisting Ibiki. But can you imagine what a resource she'd be if we could get her back into a stable team? Shizen gave her a dubious look. You know what she'll do to him, Tsunade. She can't help it. She'll end up seducing him after their first battle together, and it will only go downhill from there. Do you really want his first time to be with a dominatrix assassin who can't tell the difference between pleasure and pain? But what if she fails? Excuse me? Shizen blinked. This is Enko we're talking about. Even Jounin can't resist her techniques. But Naruto knows the counters. What? You heard me. Orochimaru lost interest in that stuff years ago, but Jiraiya's as obsessed as ever. He's taught our Naruto at least most of what he knows, including the counters for those seduction techniques Enko loves so much. Between that and his chakra level, she'll never make any headway. Oh. Well, I suppose that might work, especially considering how oblivious he is. But still, she broke off, and gave her sensei a measuring look. Why are you so set on this? The kid needs a chance to prove himself, Shizen. No one in this town has ever taken him seriously, you know. Maybe he deserved some of that as a child, but now he's come back from training all grown up and looking to show us what he can do. He wants to prove he's good for more than just mindless blow stuff up type missions, and I want to give him a shot at it. As for Enko, can you imagine what it would be like to carry one of those cursed seals for 14 years? Spending most of that time on solo missions, doing the dirtiest jobs the village has because no one dares trust you. Having to fight to hold on to your sanity every single day, and knowing that no matter what you do you're going to lose in the end. She sighed. I remember her when she was still a genin, Shizen. Before her sensei betrayed her, and her hero died, and Jiraiya and I ran away. She came back here knowing full well how she was going to be received, and she's been paying her dues every day since then. If there's anything this village can do to help her, we owe it to her to try. Late that evening, a slight figure crept stealthily over the rooftops towards Naruto's apartment. She moved with the easy assurance of one who knows the area like the back of her hand, effortlessly avoiding notice from the inhabitants of nearby buildings and the occasional traveler on the streets below. Even the Chunin on neighborhood watch duty failed to notice her passing, and she settled into her old spot across from her target with a quiet smile of satisfaction. Byakugan. She didn't really need the seal to active her bloodline these days, but the ritual brought back nostalgic memories of the time she'd done this as a genin. Hinata smiled as she looked through the dingy concrete walls to find Naruto fast asleep in his bed. Naruto, she sighed. Welcome back, my love. Oh, look at you. You've grown so tall, and those muscles. Somehow, I've got to find a way to tell you how I feel. She noticed the kunoichi on watch down the block turn in her direction, and frowned in annoyance. What had given her away? There were a million excuses she could use to explain away her presence here, but there was always a chance her father would hear about it. Then the girl body flickered to the roof where Hinata hid, and she was struck by an odd sense of déjà vu. That hair, that face, that incredible figure, there was something familiar about this girl. Hinata-chan! It's good to see you again! Hinata squeaked as the curvaceous blonde swept her into a tight embrace, and she suddenly realized why the girl seemed familiar. And Naruto? Is that you? Yep. Oh, right, I'm still a girl. Here. She reverted to he, soft curves replaced in an instant with hard muscle. Man, I've missed you. How have you been? Naruto's muscular arms held her close, and she was acutely conscious of the way her generous breasts were pressed against his firm chest. His chakra enveloped her, impossibly strong, offering affection, tenderness, protection, and passion. Please, Hinata's head swam and her face flushed, just like in the old days. But the sudden surge of desire awakened something else, something that turned her own chakra against itself in a way that couldn't possibly be natural. No! Help me! She gasped. And fainted. Huh. She did it again. Naruto scratched his head, and considered the unconscious girl. That can't have been too much chakra, I was barely using any at all. Should I take her home? No, she asked for help. For all I know, her family could be the problem. So he took her back to his apartment, and sent the clone there out to take over sentry duty while he made her as comfortable as possible on his dusty old couch. A field-grade medical scan showed no physical problems, just the after-effects of some kind of shock to her chakra system. There were all sorts of things that could have that kind of effect, and most of them would wear off on their own in a few minutes. Running through that catalog of possibilities didn't do much to set Naruto's mind at ease. When Hinata finally began to stir, he was careful to stay well away from her, just in case. Oh. Hinata sat up slowly. I fainted again, didn't I? Yeah, Naruto replied. I'm starting to get worried about you, Hinata. It seems like every time I get near you I end up making you pass out. She looked away. I'm sorry. Hey, I just want to know what's happening to my friend. Are you alright? Why, yes. She responded automatically, then stopped to consider. Perhaps. I think there are things the Hyuga don't normally discuss with anyone outside the clan. Yeah, I was afraid it was something like that. She glanced up at him sharply, and he shrugged. Hey, I'm Jiraiya's apprentice, and I'm not as clueless as I used to be. I'm not going to pry into your clan secrets if you don't want me to. But Hinata, if there's anything I can do to help you, and I mean anything at all you have to do is ask. That got him a hint of a smile. Thank you? But I'm not even sure if I'm right. How can we find out? He was so serious, and yet so open, that she couldn't help but take his offer seriously. Kiss me? She expected stammering, shock, at least hesitation. A chance to let him back out gracefully, and go find a more decorous way to test her theory. Instead, he simply replied, all right. And gently cupped her head between his calloused hands. And kissed her. It was glorious. Better than she'd ever dared dream. Infinite strength surrounded her with loving protection as a riptide of searing pleasure shot through her, instantly filling her with trembling desire. And something within her erupted in reaction to that desire, twisting it into a flare of agony that tore a scream from her throat before she collapsed again into unconsciousness. This time, when she awoke, Naruto was pacing and punching the air while muttering to himself. Noticing her movement, he turned to face her. Hinata, I saw it this time. It's the 7 Virtues chastity seal. Her expression turned to ice. I know. I saw it as well. But for it to react like that just from hugging me, you'd have to. He trailed off, unable to actually say it. Normally she might have smiled at discovering the limits of his newfound maturity, but at that moment the rage that filled her left no room for anything else. Yes, Naruto. Ever since we were children. Naruto stared at her in stunned bewilderment. Wow. I'd thought maybe, but we never talked about it, and I didn't want. He stopped, and shook his head. Sorry, I'm babbling. We'll talk about that later. What can I do? She rose, making each small movement with exaggerated precision. You studied under Jiraiya. Can you remove the seal? Normally I'd say yes, but this thing is just stupidly oversensitive. I can't even get close to you without setting it off, so it'd be tricky. Not impossible, but it would probably take a few weeks to come up with something. Damn it, what were they thinking? That thing makes you an easy target for any seduction specialist you meet, or even a genjutsu type if they figure out it's there. Just the slightest exposure to the wrong kind of technique, and it'll knock you out instantly. Yes, she replied. I know. Please excuse me, Naruto. I'm going to kill my father now. Would you like help? The calm sincerity of his offer reached her, even in her icy rage. Would he actually murder a clan head for me? Even though he barely knows me, and he'd probably be executed himself for the crime? No. Not for my sake. No, thank you. This is a problem I must deal with myself. Good evening, Naruto. Unable to risk touching him, she made do with a formal bow. And left. Naturally, Naruto sent a clone to tail her in case she needed backup. But when an hour passed with no sign of a disturbance, he decided Hinata must have stopped short of actual violence, and heaved a sigh of relief. The sentry clones around his apartment reported no further intrusions, so he finally settled in for a few minutes of meditation before bed. At least, that's what an observer would have seen. In a small country in 2 days' ninja march from Konoha, a clone nodded to himself as he received the memories of his counterpart's day. He replied with his own update and went to bed, already considering how to ask Jiraiya for advice on releasing a booby-trapped virginity seal without giving away Hinata's identity. In a hidden valley among the hills of Northern Fire Country, another pair of clones grinned at each other across the campfire. Seal research was incredibly dangerous, but there were plenty of spots in the valley their experiments hadn't blown up yet. In the Hidden Mist Ninja Academy, an orphan boy who looked nothing like Naruto held up the sword he'd been sharpening. The child prodigy briefly contemplated the fact that a steel blade has no tenketsu to seal, and resolved to ask his instructors about techniques for fighting against Juken users in the morning. In the dormitory across the quad, a young girl who was in line to graduate at the tender age of 9 rose from her bed and pulled out her poison handbook. Suddenly, the possibility of needing a discreet assassination technique seemed a lot more urgent than when she'd begun this infiltration. Far to the north, the mysterious young man who served as the most trusted bodyguard of Snow Country's queen resolved to send a clone out house hunting in the morning. His quarters in the palace had always been enough for him, but a friend who might be on the run from her family would need something roomy and discreet. Maybe a place up in the mountains, where real estate was cheap and there weren't many neighbors. A dozen other clones spread all across the elemental countries merely acknowledged the memories, and replied with their own daily updates. Some were training, others working to amass funds or infiltrate a promising target. None had any obvious contribution to make in solving this particular problem, so they simply noted it and went on with their various projects. The exception was a young man with tan skin and sun-bleached hair who sat on a deserted beach, watching the moon rise over a tiny sea country island that no other human had visited in months. Finally, he nodded to himself and rose. All right, it looks like Konoha is going to need reinforcements no matter what happens. The guy I've got for missions, another one to watch the town, and probably a third for Hinata. They'd better be tougher than those persistent shadow clones, too. One good hit can still take those guys out, and I'm not betting anyone's life that I'll always be able to dodge. Well, I guess I won't be doing any training for a few days. Drawing a small knife, he carefully slit his left arm from elbow to wrist, taking care to miss the tendons while hitting as many veins as possible. Then he dropped the knife and began forming seals as he channeled chakra into what might well be the most energy-intensive ninjutsu technique ever created. Demonic Blood Transformation Technique, Permanent Living Clone. Naruto was precisely on time for his meeting with the Hokage, a detail that both she and her assistant missed completely. He breezed into her office with a smile and a wave, ignoring her usual early morning funk. So, what have you got for me, Granny? He ducked the pencil she threw at him, cheerfully ignoring the way it embedded itself 6 inches deep in the concrete wall behind him. Something fun, I hope. Form a clone army to invade Sound? Teach the ANBU how to secure a records office? Maybe some gardening work, digging up old roots we don't need around here anymore? Tsunade had to chuckle at that one. If only it were that easy, kid. I've been at this for nearly 3 years now, and I'm still trying to figure out which ninja are actually loyal to that bunch. Well, if it comes down to it, Jiraiya and I will both back you, the young ninja said seriously. Throw in Asuma, Guy and Shizen and that gives us most of Konoha's combat power without even considering anyone else. But I guess they wouldn't realize that until after we kick their asses, so it'd end up getting pretty bloody. That is one of the problems with hiding your strength, the blonde Sannin agreed. But I didn't ask you here to talk about that. After yesterday's performance, I've decided to give you a shot at something a little more complicated than your average combat mission. She slid a personnel file across her desk. Naruto casually pulled up a chair and opened the folder. Anko, huh? Yeah, I remember her. Jiraiya-sensei's still kind of pissed about not being able to get that curse seal off her. He turned the page and whistled. Ouch. Looks like she's had some bad luck in team leaders. Oh, right, her seal was one of the experimental ones that didn't come out right. Something about mixing up bloodlust and, the other kind. Yeah, that's about the size of it. The poor girl turns into a homicidal nymphomaniac when she's under stress, and after the training she's been through, she's damned near irresistible. She could be an incredible asset if we could just keep her problems under control, but since Konoha doesn't train seduction specialists, there hasn't been much hope of that. Until now. Naruto's eyes went wide. Whoa. Yeah, I can see how there'd be some problems there. So that's why she's been stuck with village work and solo missions for so long. He considered the file for a moment. I think I see where you're going with this, but what about the fact that I'm still technically a genin? Tsunade laughed. Oh, did I forget to mention that? Here, it turns out you volunteered to join the NBU this morning. She slid another form across the desk. Naruto bent over it with a puzzled frown. Did I? My memory must be going. He signed the form and passed it back. Okay, but what good does that do? Nothing by itself. But did you know we never signed a peace treaty with Sound? So, by my authority as Hokage, I hereby promote NBU member Uzumaki Naruto to the rank of Jounin. What? He exclaimed. And place him in charge of Team Naruto, currently consisting of himself and Special Jounin Mitarashi Anko. Do a good job, and you can have your pick of the Chunin for the other 2 slots. Naruto gaped at her for a moment longer before regaining his composure. Tsunade, thank you. You won't regret this. See that I don't. But next time we spar, I'd better be looking at the real you, and not some fancy clone. Are you even in Konoha? Ah, no? Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly. But I'm not going to pop like a shadow clone either. I can bleed and heal and recover chakra just like a real person. Good. It's not fair if I'm the only one who has bruises the next day. She paused, and her expression turned serious again. Can you handle this? Seriously? He considered it. I've never even done it as a guy, and the concept of Anko in some kind of crazed sex and bloodshed frenzy is kind of intimidating. But she needs help or she's going to end up going completely nuts, and I've certainly got plenty of experience from my girl clones to fall back on. Yeah, I think so, he finally decided. Even if I'm wrong, well, I'm never alone. Good point, Tsunade agreed. Well then, time for introductions. Shizen! She called. The door opened just enough for Shizen to poke her head through. Ready? Tsunade nodded, and her assistant threw the door open to allow a bemused-looking Anko to enter. The buxom assassin took in the room, and particularly Naruto's expression, and frowned. Joint mission? She asked as Shizen closed the door. Not exactly. Anko, say hello to Naruto. Jiraiya's apprentice, Konoha's newest jounin, and your new team leader. Anko looked the orange-clad blonde up and down thoughtfully. The kinky-toed pervert's apprentice, huh? Sounds interesting. She perched herself on the arm of his chair with a cheerful grin. Just don't blame me if he comes back begging for a reassignment, boss. Yes, well, try not to be any more difficult than you have to be, the older woman replied sourly. But in the interest of getting that issue settled as soon as possible, I've got a mission assignment for you. She retrieved another folder from the piles on her desk and passed it over. There's been a bit of bandit trouble up near the northern border, and we've received a request to take care of it. Normally we'd send a genin team, but I've got a Nara analyst telling me he thinks it's a trap. Something about the timing of the attacks being a little too neat for real bandits. Anyway, I want you two to run a little impersonation scam and see what you can turn up. Sounds like fun, Anko commented. We can't have those stone fuckers killing off our cute little genin before they grow up, after all. Or maybe it'll be lighting, they're always fun to dance with. Or maybe Orochimaru is collecting experimental subjects again, which gives us a shot at finding leads on him, Naruto added. We'll get right on it, Granny. This time he caught the thrown pen a few millimeters from his nose, and calmly used it to sign the mission acceptance form. I'll leave a few clones around town just to confuse any lurking spies, and if we run into anything interesting I'll relay word back so they can let you know. Maybe I should leave you a couple of spares as bodyguards while I'm at it? You do seem to be slowing down a little. Tsunade growled. Watch it, kid. I can still order a full physical for you anytime I want. Naruto shot out of the chair with an expression of mock panic. Well, we're burning daylight here. We'd better get on that mission, Hokage-sama. Wouldn't want to waste any more of your valuable time, after all. Anko snickered as she followed him out the door. Neither member of the newly formed team spoke again until they were safely out of the building. Anko tipped her head slightly in the direction of ANBU headquarters, but Naruto shook his minutely and indicated the Hokage monument instead. 5 minutes later they were on the deserted trail behind the great stone heads. Kind of open, don't you think? Anko commented as she looked around warily. I'm an S-rank wind user, Naruto replied. No one's going to get close enough to listen in here unless they're phased into the rock or something, and I've had the place staked out since yesterday. Fair enough, she conceded. I can't believe the boss wants to try this again. I appreciate the thought, but well, I assume you know what happened to my last few team leaders? Yeah. I was pretty surprised too. I mean, usually she freaks out at the slightest hint of anything perverted. And now she's basically putting you in charge of screwing me senseless anytime I need it, Anko went on with a cheerful leer. You really think you can handle me, stud? I'm not gonna go all gooey and do I just cause you lay a kiss of surrender on me or something. Please. I wouldn't use that crap on an enemy, let alone my teammate. But before we get all caught up in planning the post-mission party, why don't we put some thought into the actual mission? Spoilsport. She stuck out her tongue at him, and he laughed. Okay, we can do the mission first. How are we going to impersonate a bunch of kitties anyway? Heh. Check this out. Persistent Genin team. A pair of 13-year-old boys and a girl the same age appeared in a puff of smoke, and looked around with interest. They wore Konoha forehead protectors and reasonably practical clothes, but all three were festooned with equipment pouches, canteens, bags, and backpacks. Pretty typical for a Genin team on their first long-distance mission. So we finally get to use this trick, huh? The taller of the two boys looked up at Anko while absently tugging at his pigtail. Guess you'd be our Jounin sensei then. Hi, I'm Ranma, the best taijutsu specialist around. Quit staring at her chest, you bastard, the other boy growled. I'm Ryuga. I'm an earth specialist, and one of these days I'm going to kick Ranma's ass. Yeah, you and what army, bacon breath? Don't forget about me, the girl chimed in. My name's Akane, and I'm a ninja too. Yeah, her cooking is so deadly the Hokage declared it a forbidden technique, Ranma commented mockingly. Ranma! I heard that, you jerk. The insulted girl tried to bash him over the head with a spiked club she'd pulled out of nowhere, but the boy nonchalantly sidestepped the attack. Unfortunately, one of his canteens wasn't properly strapped down. The club smashed it apart in midair, and water went everywhere. Ryuga vanished as the water struck him, leaving behind empty clothes and a pile of gear. But as his overloaded backpack crashed to the ground, a small form struggled out of the falling clothes and leaped clear. A piglet? The tiny pig squealed indignantly and launched itself at Ranma, who was now a redhead and starting to wring out his shirt. No, her shirt. Ranma was quite definitely female now. Ow! The self-proclaimed taijutsu master complained as the piglet bit her ankle. Quit that, you little porker! It wasn't my fault. Ranma, stop picking on Pichan. Akane dropped her club to scoop up the angry pig and cuddle it against her chest. There, Pichan, mommy won't let the mean old pervert hurt you. Ranma rolled her eyes. Great, here we go again. Akane stopped and looked around in puzzlement. Hey, where'd Ryuga go? Anko giggled. You're holding him, kiddo. The younger girl looked at the pig in confusion. What? No, this is my pet pig Pichan. He's always wandering off and getting lost, but he finds his way home eventually. Don't you, Mr. Pichan? Yes, you do. You're a smart little piggy, aren't you? Don't bother. Ranma groused. She'll never get it. Hey, are either of you a fire type? I need to heat up some water to change us back. Anko chortled. Naruto, you're a genius. Anyone who meets these three is gonna be so busy trying to figure out what the hell's going on with them that they'll never think to wonder if they're clones. Did you make them up, or are they real people? Beats me. I got into tech summoning a while back, and of course I pulled in all kinds of random crap from the Elseworlds before I got any control over what I was summoning. I got this bunch from some books I summoned, but I'm not sure if they were fiction or not. But either way, no one else is going to recognize them, which is perfect for random genin. Anko nodded approvingly. But are they really gonna hold up long enough for this kind of mission? We're looking at a couple of days to get out to the border, and probably a few more of poking around before we find anything. Not a problem, Naruto answered proudly. My persistent clones can last for weeks as long as I'm close enough to recharge their chakra, and my range on that's more than 20 miles. But the real trick is the transformations. Yeah, I did wonder how Pig Boy does the empty shirt trick. An illusion wouldn't do that. The piglet squealed in protest, but the special Jounin ignored him. Let me guess. You figured out a way to make clones based on something besides yourself? Better, he grinned. They're just chakra constructs. If you overload a transformation the right way, you can reshape them into anything you want, and the change is just as real as the clone was. See that bird? He pointed to a raptor circling among the thermals high over the city. No way. Anko stared at the distant bird, and then at her new team leader. That's a clone? Damn, that's a hell of a trick. I wish I could do that. I'll show you if you want, but I'm not sure how much good it will do you. A hawk clone ends up taking about 3 times as much chakra as a regular shadow clone, and that's awfully expensive for a normal person. Yeah, too much to be worth it, she agreed regretfully. But if that's your plan, can you make a clone for the kid's sensei too? No one who knows anything about Konoha would buy me being trusted with a team of rugrats. Some days Naruto could actually keep a secret from his sensei, but not today. One casual question about virginity seals, and the old man smelled blood. It took nearly an hour, but eventually he wormed the truth out of his student. Surprisingly, the revelation failed to trigger the expected teasing. Instead, Jiraiya's mood took an unusually serious turn. You've really got your work cut out for you if you want to go there, he said finally. Hyuga seal work is damn tight, and they've been perfecting that crap they use to control their own clan members for generations. There's a reason branch family members don't just defect and get their seals removed. Yeah, I figure those caged bird seals have more booby traps than one of Orochimaru's hideouts, Naruto grumbled in reply. But the 7 virtues doesn't explode when you activate it, so it would be a lot harder to make tamper-proof. The thing is, they've got the sensitivity set so high I can't even get close to it without setting it off. Exactly. That's how they do it, Jiraiya explained. You'll burn out her abdominal tenketsu if you try to peel it off while it's active, which would leave her sterile and probably crippled even if she survived. The trick is to avoid activating the seal while it's being removed, but they've closed off all the obvious loopholes over the years. When I was your age, you just had to get a woman to do the removal, but they figured that one out when Yoko turned out to be a lesbian. These days they tune it so any foreign chakra other than the girl's own father will set it off. But that's stupid. Naruto protested. What if he dies before they get married? Jiraiya shrugged. What can I say, these guys are paranoid. They'd rather take a chance on that than have a possibility of someone outside their clan getting the Byakugan. Naruto frowned, then suddenly stopped with a look of surprise on his face. Wait, you mean they do that to the guys too? No wonder Neji was always such an ass. But how do they rub one out? The Toad Sage chuckled. They can't. Even without foreign chakra around, they'll get zapped if they get that worked up. Like I always say, that is one messed up family. Did you know they even invented a fidelity seal for when they get married? Naruto shook his head. Unbelievable. Let me guess, that's one's designed so there isn't any way to remove it, like the caged bird seal. So if your spouse dies or something, you're just out of luck. Yep, you guessed it. The genin settled noisily into their campsite, bickering constantly over everything from the placement of their tents to the division of chores. Their sensei, a clone based on an ex-ANBU named Yuryu, made a half-hearted attempt to supervise. In less than 10 minutes Ryoga was a pig again. A topless Ranma-chan was wringing out her soaking wet shirt and muttering under her breath about uncute tomboys, and Akane was merrily cooking away at their small fire. When Yuryu noticed her adding camouflage paint and boot polish to the pot, he gave up on trying to control the case, and slunk away to gnaw on a ration bar and mutter incoherently to himself. 6 miles away, Anko was cheerfully camouflaging the entrance to a small hide Naruto had tunneled into a hillside, while he finished drawing an array of concealment seals on the walls of the burrow. Good call on the seals, she commented as she finally slipped inside. It's always nice to be able to use camping jutsu without worrying if some passing is going to sense them. But I thought your element was wind? It is. My earth techniques are so slow you'd think a genin was doing them. Oh ho! She chuckled. Just the right level to play Ryuga, huh? But doesn't that mean you had to do that leaf training thing twice to get 2 elements down? Jiraiya must be more boring than I thought if you had time for that. Naruto placed one of the smokeless logs he'd brought into the small fire pit at the mouth of the hollow, and lit it with a tightly controlled fire jutsu. 5 times, actually. Jiraiya thought I was nuts, but the biggest advantage I've got is the fact that I can do insane amounts of training. Running 30 or 40 clones at a time adds up when you do it for months on end. Of course, it didn't work out like I'd hoped. I thought since my chakra is so huge I might be able to get around the usual limit on using elements you don't have an affinity for, but no such luck. I can do low-level techniques from all 5 elements, as long as I don't mind burning a ton of chakra. But I can't convert chakra to elemental form fast enough to make high-level techniques practical for anything but air. Anko finished positioning a pair of ration packs over the fire, and nodded. Yeah, that makes sense. Still sounds pretty useful though. That gives you all the basic utility stuff, and a bunch of deception potential for your clones. Although, she paused and cocked her head thoughtfully while she did the math. You're actually older than I am, aren't you? He shrugged. Depends on how you count. I've done a few decades worth of training in the last 2 years, but absorbing memories from clones doesn't age you the same way living the same length of time would. There's a difference between living for a month and having 30 yesterdays. 30 yesterdays, huh? Anko sighed and settled herself on the ground next to the young/old blonde. Too bad we've got to stay on alert here. I'm getting curious what else you learned in all that training time. He chuckled and slipped an arm around her waist. I'm sure you'll find out soon enough, Anko-chan. Then he relaxed his chakra concealment technique, allowing his massively overdeveloped aura to expand into the space defined by the seals. Anko's sarcastic comeback was promptly forgotten as she found herself submerged in an ocean of foreign chakra. It was 1,000 times more powerful than anything she could have generated, and she felt a brief moment of panic before realizing that her companion was the source. That, and unlike the projections of killing intent she was used to, it wasn't hostile at all. No, it was protective? No one had tried to protect her since she was 8. Naruto, what are you doing? Just relaxing. Suppressing your presence all day is murder when you've got this much chakra, but I have to keep building it up anyway because it's my one big advantage over guys like Itachi. Oh, wait, did you mean the empathy thing? If that's what's pushing those feelings at me. Not just protectiveness. Amusement, curiosity, affection, desire. Was this what friendship felt like? That doesn't feel like a seduction technique. What's it for? It's an empathic projection. I was trying to figure out a way to set up actual telepathy between my clones, but so far all I've managed to do is make it so I leak emotions when my aura isn't suppressed. It's kind of an embarrassing problem for a ninja, but right now it takes some concentration to keep it from happening. So it's real? Not some kind of trick? Anko bit her lip. Real or not, it was so damn good to feel safe for once. Anko, we're teammates now. I might joke around with you, but I'd never trick you about something serious. It was impossible to miss his feelings about that. You take care of your teammates. Protect them, trust them, sacrifice for them. Bleed and die for them if necessary. Most people cared less about their own children than Naruto did his teammates. And he was offering that to her? The girl who betrayed her village and then her sensei, and couldn't be trusted with anything for fear of what traps might still be lurking in her damaged mind. Do you want me to stop? He asked gently. No, she replied fiercely. Then, a little calmer. No. I kinda like it. Anyone from Konoha would have panicked at the sight of the nine-tailed fox lounging beside the moonlit lagoon. It was only the size of a large dog, and despite the number of tails it barely held more chakra than the average jonin. But the malevolent aura it radiated was unmistakably the Kyuubi's, as was the alien red chakra that swirled around it. Naruto wasn't worried. Oh, the fox could be tricky, but that was his shadow clone it was possessing. He could still dispel it with a thought, and it hardly had enough power to be dangerous anyway. Their discussion was of more concern. 2 weeks, but you have to stay on the island, he offered. If you go causing havoc, word'll get back to Konoha, and then the old men on the council will panic and try to have me killed. I suppose, the fox grumbled. But sniffing the breeze isn't so great if I can't kill anything fun. What I really want is some progress on that dismissal technique. Naruto snorted. Yeah, I wish. Where am I supposed to get 6 tails worth of native chakra and a holy kami willing to risk its life to send you home? I've never even heard of anyone needing any kind of celestial kami, let alone a holy one. You won't, Cereza commented from her spot on the lake. Swimming was still a novel experience for her, and one she insisted on repeated as often as possible. She'd put up with having the fox around if it means she could swim. They all left. Some of their children are still around, but I've never seen one whose chakra was actually holy. So call one back, the Kyuubi insisted. Sacrifice a few villages or something. There's got to be some way to get one here. What, so you can eat them too? They're not stupid, Mr. Grumpy Pants. The Kyuubi growled at the air spirit, but she simply giggled and dove underwater. After a moment he huffed, and turned back to Naruto. One of these days I'm going to kill that little airhead. Uh-huh. So, are you going to show me this soul transference technique or not? Privately Naruto had to concede that, whatever his other moral shortcomings, at least the Kyuubi was honest about what he was. Sure, he was a psychotic monster by human standards, but at least he just wanted to kill you. He wouldn't spend weeks torturing you first, or try to gain your trust just so he could betray it, and he thought the human practice of using little kids as weapons and living sacrifices was disgusting. By ninja standards that made him a real stand-up guy. Not that Naruto was dumb enough to trust the fox's word on how these demonic techniques worked. He was pretty careful to pick them apart, and rework them using his own skills before relying on them too much. But honestly, who else was going to know anything about building techniques that take a whole tail of chakra to pull off? Oh, what the hell. Make it 2 weeks on the next island over, and don't bitch if it isn't there anymore when I'm done. But you realize this isn't some touchy-feely sugar plum angel resurrection thing? Demonic soul transference rips the victim's soul out of its rightful body, kicking and screaming, and the harder they fight it, the more it damages their mind in the process. Sure, you can stuff them into another body if you've got one handy, but that doesn't make it theirs. Usually they don't integrate with it right, and you just get a raving zombie. Naruto frowned. You can't repair the connections between the soul and the chakra circulatory system? All those little fiddly bits? The fox guffawed. Please. I'd die of boredom first. What the hell do you want a technique like that for anyway? I can't see you ever using it. Cereza surfaced again, and Naruto turned to watch his friend chasing a fish through the warm waters. Finally, he said, demonic blood transformation doesn't actually have to be done on your own blood, does it? The demon fox froze, and turned to stare at him. You are one scary little monkey, you know that? Yeah, that would solve the compatibility problem all right. Where do you come up with this stuff? In the next year or two I have to kill 10 of the toughest ninja in the world, or everyone I care about is going to die. Naruto smiled grimly. Just call me highly motivated. So, how are we going to find these bandits anyway? Ryuga asked. The ersatz genin team was walking along a trail in the target area, moving at a normal civilian pace to facilitate conversation. Maybe you could get lost and stumble on their camp? Ranma suggested. Akane rolled her eyes. Honestly, Ranma, can't you stop picking on Ryuga for 5 minutes? Obviously we'll have to check the local villages to see where they've been operating. Then we can either disguise ourselves as merchants, or just sweep the roads until we find one of their scouts. Right, sensei? I don't think that will be necessary, Akane. The older ninja replied as his eyes swept the trees. It seems they've already found us. There was a nasty chuckle from the trees before a figure bearing a gigantic sword stepped out into view. His oddly shark-like face would have intimidated most genin, but the black robe decorated with red clouds was more of a concern for those in the know. Yuri paled. I gotta admit, I was starting to think this scam wasn't going to catch us anything in time. Tell you what, little man, you tell me everything you know about the QB container, and I might let the kiddies live. Hashigaki Kisame, Yuri observed evenly. S-rank Nuke-nin, originally from Hidden Mist, currently a member of the criminal organization Akatsuki. We'll have to take this one seriously, everyone. Ranma looked the missing Nin up and down with a confident smirk. This freak? He don't look so tough. Fine, you charge in and get yourself killed. Ryuga muttered. I'm going to be ready for this guy. Earth Golem armor. The ground around the heavy-set boy rushed up to engulf him, and continued on until a 15-foot giant of earth stood in his place. I'm not a kid, Akane growled, as her aura spiked into the visible range and a vortex of wind sprung up around her. Don't dismiss me or you'll regret it. You kiddies think you're going to fight me? This is rich. You'll never even touch me. Water release, instant lake. Water erupted from the earth all around them, in a thundering mass that inundated the whole area. Ryuga's earth form was quickly submerged, and Ranma yelped as he found himself female and struggling to stay afloat. Yuri stood atop the rising waters and faded back a bit, watching for an opening. All pretty much what Kisame had expected. Akane was different. Her eyes narrowed and she launched herself forward in a crash of thunder, splitting the rising waters and crossing the 20 yards between them in the blink of an eye. He was so startled he barely got his sword up in time. A delicate fist sheathed in more wind chakra than any genin could possibly produce impacted the massive blade, and blew the missing Nin back through 40 yards of trees to fetch up against the side of a nearby hill. I told you not to dismiss me. The girl smirked, and formed a pair of clones before following. What the hell is with that girl? Kisame shook his head to clear it, and found himself looking at a pair of boots. His eyes scanned up to find long legs, a curvaceous figure barely covered by tight mesh armor and an unbuttoned trench coat, and a manic grin beneath a mop of dark purple hair. I get my very own S-rank Nuke-nin to kill? She clasped her hands together and squealed like a giddy schoolgirl. Naruto, you shouldn't have. Akane landed on a tree branch behind her, and blurred into a considerably older and more curvaceous kunoichi. Knock yourself out, Enko-chan. But I think I'll hang around to back you up if you don't mind? Kisame heaved himself back to his feet and chuckled. Cute. This might actually be fun. Back on the trail, Yuri was startled by a sudden comment from behind him. Interesting. So this was a trap. He spun, and found himself looking into a pair of Sharingan eyes. Itachi. Indeed, the legendary ninja confirmed. But you were caught quite easily for a jounin. Are your skills that poor, or did you think you could actually defeat my Tsukuyumi? The world fell away. Yuria found himself hanging from a wooden cross in a dead winter forest, with a crimson moon overhead. But unlike most victims of the dreaded technique, he merely smiled. You could say that. Itachi leaned closer to examine him. Really? You have no Sharingan, and no lesser genjutsu can match my power. So what I see. You're a clone. So you can see the chakra connections at close range? Good to know. But what I'm really wondering is, how many times can you use these funky eye techniques before you run out of chakra? By now. The clone dispelled himself, and the technique collapsed. Itachi scanned the waterlogged forest for enemies, but he needn't have bothered. 4 Naruto clones arrived in swirls of leaves an instant later, and began circling to surround him. You know, Itachi, your brother's going to be pissed if I kill you before he gets the chance. Sure you don't want to call off this bijou collecting nonsense before your boss blows up the world or something? No. The 4 Narutos became 16, and Itachi frowned. You're all clones, he commented. Yeah, but that won't stop us from kicking your ass. You're pretty tough, but I'm the worst kind of opponent there is for a guy like you. So, are you going to make an excuse and run away, or are we going to do this? Catching the real one will be difficult, Itachi thought. I need to see what else he can do. You cannot defeat me, Naruto. But you are welcome to try. Tsunade grumbled to herself as she paged through the quarterly manpower reports. Konoha was finally recovering from the losses suffered in the brief sound/sand invasion 3 years before, but it was still a struggle to find resources for anything beyond normal operations. Most of the reforms she'd once hoped to put in place were still hopelessly out of reach, and she was beginning to wonder if that would ever change. There just weren't enough qualified field medics to put one on every Chunin team, let alone the genin. Her more grandiose plans for field hospitals and an expanded medic nin training program were even further out of reach. Skilled ninja with good chakra control were just too rare, and most of them were always tied up with the missions that kept the village solvent. Her brooding was interrupted when a pigeon flew in the open window to land in the visitor's chair in front of her desk, and transformed into her favorite blonde. Hey, Granny, Naruto said cheerfully. I just wanted to let you know you were right about that mission being a trap, but it's even bigger than we thought. Enko-chan and I are fighting Itachi and Kisame up near Blackrock Pass right now. Tsunade blinked in surprise as she tried to process the unexpected interruption. Itachi? Damn. It'd take a day to get anyone up there. Don't worry about it, Granny, I can handle Itachi, Naruto tried to reassure her. Besides, that's just a blood clone anyway. Even if he beats me, I just lose a little chakra, and I'll have plenty of shadow clones around to help Enko get away if she needs to run. Right. A clone. Okay, let me know how it turns out. Then she thought about what she was saying. Wait a minute. Naruto, are you telling me you're getting messages from a clone more than 200 miles away from here in real time? You bet. I had to leave a few clones along the way to act as relays, but as long as they don't get dispelled, it only takes a few seconds to pass a message. He grinned at the astounded Sannin. Think we could find a few uses for that? Yeah, maybe a few, she said wryly. How many of those permanent clones can you make, anyway? Well, I've got 2 ways to do it. A persistent clone can last a couple of weeks if it doesn't burn too much chakra, and it can take a few cuts and bruises without dispelling, but other than that it works just like a normal shadow clone. My blood clones are pretty much real people, but I lose about 5% of my chakra permanently when I make one. I can train it back up, but that's still enough to matter. I've got a couple of them headed here now as backup, but they won't be in Konoha until tomorrow. I see. I assume it takes some ridiculous amount of chakra to make that technique work? He scratched his head and nodded. Yeah, pretty much. About 1,000 times as much as a regular shadow clone. Not much point in adding it to the Forbidden Scroll, then. She glanced down at the reports on her desk, then back at her visitor. There were some interesting possibilities there. But that could wait. Okay, I'll want to talk more about that in a bit. But first, tell me about this fight with Itachi. Enko dodged a stroke from Kisame's sword that would have cut her in half if it had connected, and danced back across the new-made lake with a laugh. He tried to catch her with a water prison, but she escaped into the half-submerged trees with a replacement technique and replied with a fire jutsu that turned half an acre of woods into an instant inferno. Kisame's water clone was blown away by the blast, while the real missing nin watched the scene from below. She's good, he thought as he gazed up through the murky water. Fast, vicious, good technique selection, sexy as hell, and uses that as another weapon. Too bad she's got that prison-penetrating replacement technique, or I'd take her alive and have some fun with her later. I bet she's the type who loves being conquered. But what worries me is the way the other one's just standing there watching. The blonde kunoichi that Akane had transformed into chose that moment to pitch a wind blast at him that blew through the intervening water like it wasn't even there. For the second time in this fight, he barely brought Samahata around in time to block, and the attack tore the wrappings right off his strange sword. Crap, he thought, that was as big as one of Kakuzu's attacks. I can't afford to get hit by one of those things, and I've got no idea what other tricks these two have up their sleeves. Time to kick it up a notch. As the hole the blonde's technique had blasted through his leg crashed closed, he cut his thumb against one of Samahata's scales, and slapped his hand against the ground. Summoning technique, Deep Blue Sea. An immense geyser of pressurized water shot hundreds of feet into the air, dousing the forest fire and flooding the whole valley even deeper. Kisame had selected the ambush site with his favorite tactic in mind, and the shallow bowl could be flooded to a depth of over 100 feet in a matter of minutes. That would give him plenty of cover and water for his techniques, while the steep slopes surrounding the valley would prevent his opponents from getting out of sight of the new-made lake. The only significant area that would be out of his view was the broad southern pass where Itachi had stationed himself. In Kisame's opinion, anyone who voluntarily tangled with the Sharingan user just to avoid him deserved what they got. 100 yards away, Itachi was becoming mildly irritated. He'd first tried to dispel Naruto's clones with thrown shuriken, but the swirling winds that surrounded them batted the projectiles away easily. He was faintly amused when 2 of the clones immediately collected the lost weapons and ran away with them, but the fact that 4 others were rushing to attack occupied most of his attention. They drew short blades as they approached, sheathing them in wind chakra intense enough to be visible even to normal vision. He eyed the tenuous threads of chakra that connected the clones as they approached, hoping to catch a glimpse of the line that must extend back to their maker. Then they reached him, and he suddenly realized how different his opponent was from the clumsy genin he'd encountered 2 years before. The careless brawler had become a blazing fast taijutsu master, with Jounin-level skill and a deadly repertoire of close combat jutsu. Worse, his clones now fought with competent tactics and nearly perfect teamwork. Itachi was still the better fighter, of course, but his margin of superiority was uncomfortably thin. 1 clone at a time he could have handled easily, but 4 at once? He sidestepped 1 blow and whirled away from another, but a third drew a thin line of blood down his left arm. He planted a kunai in 1 clone's belly, but it popped into a log a second later and a hail of shuriken rained down on him from above. The other 3 pressed their attack and he took another shallow cut, this one going right through his robe and the armor underneath. Then he caught a glimpse of female clones moving to encircle the melee, each surrounded by a cloud of wind-charged kunai snaking through the air on chakra strings, and he knew he couldn't let this remain a taijutsu fight. He did a replacement to get some distance, and sure enough the clones followed. But the split-second delay gave him time for a jutsu. Great fireball technique. The perfectly timed blast of flame took out 6 of the clones who'd been pursuing him. Unfortunately, 2 of them exploded. The resulting fireball blew down trees in a 30-yard radius, and Itachi lost the rest of his Akatsuki robe to the flames. If he hadn't recognized the telltale energy build-up a split second in advance, he'd have been dead instead of just singed. He knows the clone great explosion technique. With his chakra he can overload them, and fill the entire forest if he wants to. I need to end this quickly. Then a wall of water came smashing through the trees from the direction of Kisame's fight, sending flying debris everywhere, and for a few moments both combatants were occupied with not drowning. Half a mile away the real Naruto concentrated on directing the fight. He still hadn't perfected actual telepathy, but with his memory clone technique each of his clones could instantly send a package of recent memories to any other clone it still had a chakra connection with. Every few seconds he received another burst of memories from the leader of one clone team or another, or from the hawk clones currently circling the area at high altitude. It was disorienting to say the least, but he'd spent a fair amount of time training against himself this way. There were 40 clones involved in the fight with Itachi, either attacking him directly or setting up ambushes all around him. It was the same tactic he'd used against Tsunade, and he noted with satisfaction that it seemed to be working. Itachi was burning chakra fast and soaking up minor hits anyway. In a few minutes the damage would start slowing him down, and then one of the clones should be able to get a lethal hit in. Which means he's about to pull some cool trick I've never heard of out of his ass, Naruto thought to himself. No way is a guy like Itachi actually going to go down this easy. But unless he's got some way to keep me from replacing my clones, he's going to lose this fight in the long run. I only have to get lucky once, but the only way he can win is if he kills all my clones at the same time. The clones fighting Kisame were having a tougher time of it, since he made the lake too deep for even A-rank wind techniques to penetrate. The Nukenin's water techniques went through it just fine, of course, and the water clones he kept sending up to hunt his attackers were surprisingly effective. Naruto's wind clones picked them off steadily, but they were inflicting enough casualties in return that Enko had backed off from the confused melee to avoid becoming one of them. Not something I ever would have expected from her, but I'm actually kind of relieved. I was afraid she'd go psycho and just charge the guy. But if he's willing to hide under his lake until I finish Itachi, I'm happy to let him. I could actually run low on chakra if I tried to fight both of these guys at once. He sent off an update, and the clone currently leading one of the Itachi ambush teams grinned as the missing nin's latest body flicker ended near his team's position. The 4 clones all threw shuriken as they leaped to attack, forcing their target to spend precious instants dodging while they closed. But instead of defending himself, Itachi turned dead black for an instant before dissolving into a flock of ravens. Kai! The overpowered dispel the team leader performed would have blown away any normal genjutsu within 100 yards, but apparently Itachi's techniques weren't vulnerable to such brute force counters. An instant later, the whole team was dispelled by the shuriken the illusionary birds had concealed, and for the first time since the fight began there were no clones near Itachi. It took several seconds for the next closest team of wind clones to rectify that problem. The clones weren't bothering to avoid their opponent's gaze, since Naruto figured he could make far more clones than Itachi could snare with his Sharingan. So the first clone in the next assault wasn't surprised to find himself sucked into the hallucinatory world of the Tsukuyumi. Instead of dispelling himself, he just looked around curiously, intending to hold out as long as possible in hopes of increasing the technique's chakra cost. "You are an irritating pest, Naruto," Itachi commented as he appeared before the paralyzed team. "But men kill pests, not vice versa. Now let's see where the real you is hiding." Then he looked into Naruto's eyes, and pushed his power into the clone's chakra system. Into and through. Reaching down the tenuous chakra connection that all clones shared, he caught the clone's maker in his illusion. But it was only another clone. He pushed harder, forcing his genjutsu down all the chakra links that radiated out from his victims. The rest of the clone team fell into his grasp. Then the 4 members of a second team, and a third. Soon the landscape was dotted with dozens of orange-clad blondes, each tied or nailed or otherwise secured to his own individual wooden cross. But where was the master? He gritted his teeth and pushed harder. There, a tenuous link to a much more distant clone. It was linked to 3 more, all widely scattered. No other links. Another tenuous link led to a bird? Was that a summon or a new type of clone? Later. He focused on the stronger links, and pulled in another dozen clones. One of them had a thin connection to another distant clone, which connected to one even further away. Then another cluster, each linked to an even more distant clone. Wait, this shouldn't be possible, he suddenly realized. Every clone should link to its maker, and possibly to the others that were created at the same time. But I've seen all 4 members of a clone team spawn reinforcements at the same time, and I know I've dispelled several of the older clones. So how can all the clones still be part of one neatly organized network, especially one that looks suspiciously like a military org chart? Where are the holes from lost parent clones? This must mean his clones can drop and recreate their chakra links at will. Did he develop that to manage the psychic backlash from losing large groups at once, or do the links serve some other purpose for him? Either way, it means my real opponent may not even be connected to this network. "Hey, Itachi, I've got a question," one of the trapped clones commented thoughtfully. "This trick about catching clones in your eye thing without even looking at them is pretty cool, but does the 3 days of torture in a second part still work if your targets are spread all over the place? 'Cause I'm pretty sure Jiraiya told me once that fast time illusions are still limited by light speed delay." "In theory," he answered absently as he considered the dilemma. "But that will hardly save you. The range of Shadow Clone is only a few miles, and you'd need a far greater distance to affect my technique." "Cool. That's what I thought." Something about Naruto's tone pulled the Sharingan user out of his introspection long enough to actually look at the clones he'd caught. Most of them were just like the ones he'd been fighting, but there were also a pair of birds, a Naruto in civilian clothes, and a half-dozen others that didn't look anything like their maker. 3 were disguised as civilians, but one wore the uniform of a Sannin while 2 others wore mist forehead protectors. The last 3 grinned and waved. The faintest hint of concern showed on the impassive ninja's face as he suddenly realized that his technique gave him no sense at all of the absolute distance covered by those chakra links he'd been following, but only of how strong they were. If Naruto had some way to extend the range of his clones. Itachi cancelled his technique just as a hawk clone clutching a Rasengan the size of a basketball slammed into his back. Another one struck an instant later, followed by a half-dozen focused wind blasts that reduced the spot where he'd been standing to a smoking crater 30 feet deep. Blood and body parts flew high into the air. Yes. I knew splitting into more than one link group was a good idea. A few clones cautiously approached the grisly remains as the others kept their eyes on the area, just in case. The leader of the second clone network bent to pick up the head, but stopped as streamers of chakra began rising off of it. In a few seconds the face changed, becoming that of a stranger with perfectly normal eyes. What the hell? The clone stared at the unfamiliar face. Wait, a possession technique? Then he was never really here at all, and that probably wasn't even his full power. Of course it wasn't mine either, but oh crap. Now he's seen all those new techniques of mine, and I hardly saw him do anything I didn't already know about. Damn it! I beat the bastard and he still came out ahead. A thunderous crash drew his attention to the lake that currently filled the lower reaches of the valley. A snake summon nearly the size of a bijou was collapsing into the water, while Enko leapt from its back to attack a Kisame clone who was standing on the lake's surface. Or possibly the real Kisame, considering the way he blew her out of the air with a water dragon before she could reach him. The water clones were fast, but not fast enough to do that to Enko. Oh shit! He exclaimed. I was so busy with Itachi I forgot to keep sending reinforcements to help Enko. I don't have any clones left down there. Fortunately, the blood clone who'd been managing both battles came to the same realization a moment later. Crap, I've got to get Enko some real help down there fast. She may be tough, but that guy's a monster. But he's probably not the real thing either, so yeah, time to show these guys a little of the old me. Covering long distances with consecutive body flickers is perfectly possible. It just takes too much chakra to be feasible for most ninja. Naruto hardly noticed. 10 seconds later he was at the edge of the lake, ready to charge in and save the day if need be. A report from one of the Hawk clones revealed why Kisame had abandoned the safety of the lake depths. Apparently there were now thousands of tiny snakes swimming about in the water, and knowing Enko they were bound to be lethally poisonous as well as aquatic. Kisame was actually standing on the back of a giant shark made of water, so apparently he wasn't immune to poison. But the shark-like ninja was a little too busy to worry about water snakes at the moment, since Enko had somehow managed to close with him. The crazy minx was dodging and weaving around his blows with inhuman flexibility, the snakes wrapped around both her arms constantly trying to bite him as she threw kicks and punches with limbs that seemed to change length at will. Okay, that's going a little too far with the creepy snake thing, Naruto muttered to himself. Damn it, I can't get a clear shot with them that close together. We haven't had a chance to practice fighting together either, so charging in isn't going to help much. Okay, get clone teams all around the edge of the lake and get ready to plaster him when I get a clear shot. What else can I Enko? Kisame finally managed to connect, with a hit that cut one of Enko's snakes in half and sent her flying across the lake in a spray of blood. Somehow Naruto was there to catch her before she hit the water. Ouch, she complained weakly. That didn't quite work like it was supposed to. One side of her mesh armor was completely shredded, and the pulverized remains of 2 ribs were clearly visible in the mess of mangled flesh underneath. You kept him busy long enough, Enko-chan. You just take it easy now, and let me deal with this. He summoned a clone team to carry the injured woman to safety. Did your little girlfriend get a bump? Do you need a break so you can kiss it and make it all better? Kisame taunted. Enko growled. Rip his lungs out for me, will you? Sure thing. Keep your snakes around for a couple more minutes if you can, okay? She nodded, and the clones made a break for the edge of the lake with her. Naruto turned to face Kisame with a scowl. You guys are really starting to piss me off, you know that? You do realize I'm about to beat you with just one word. Kisame guffawed. Yeah, right. What word is that? Please? Naruto shook his head. Nope. It's fire! Kisame was standing in the middle of a lake nearly a mile in diameter, so when the 70 clones who'd taken up positions along the shore all unloaded wind attacks at him at the nearest solid cover was well out of body flicker range. The best he could do was drop below the surface of the water, which didn't help at all when the hawks circling overhead added their spiral wind cannon attacks to the salvo. Each blast was a supersonic vortex of cutting wind chakra 8 feet in diameter that penetrated clear to the bottom of the lake in an instant. Even Kisame couldn't dodge that many high-speed attacks at once. The first hit knocked Samahata from his grip. The second removed his right leg at the knee. The third hit him squarely in the face, and after that it was all overkill. Naruto watched the churning surface of the lake until it stilled, and the waters began to drain away. Then he nodded in satisfaction. I win the first round. Now I just need to figure out where these guys are hiding so I can take them out for real. He left a ring of clones out to secure the area, of course. With opponents as slippery as Akatsuki you could never be sure if they were really dead, and he wasn't about to take chances. But his partner was in no condition to be moved. 2 shadow clones were working to stabilize her when he reached their hiding spot, but both were running low on chakra. Naruto bent over the wound to get a first-hand look and frowned in concern. It isn't healing right, one of the clones complained. That freaky sword screwed up her chakra somehow, and regular healing techniques aren't working. We slowed down the bleeding, but at this rate I'm not sure we can get her back to Konoha in time. Sorry, boss, Anko gasped out. Thought I had him. Hey, you've got nothing to apologize for. You kept a Kage-level enemy busy long enough for me to beat Itachi. But it turns out they were using some kind of possession technique, so those weren't their real bodies. We've got to get out of here before any of their buddies show up. Damn. I was hoping we'd killed the bastards for real. Anko coughed weakly, and Naruto was alarmed to see blood on her lips. Can't fix myself. Chakra's all wonky. Not enough left, anyway. A diagnostic jutsu of his own confirmed the situation. Crap. You've got a punctured lung and a lot of internal bleeding. I've got some basic techniques, but I'm not enough of a medic to handle this even without the chakra damage. At least, not the normal way. I've got a special technique that should be able to heal you up, but I'm not sure I've got all the kinks worked out of it yet. If nothing else, I'm sure it's got to hurt like hell. Not feeling real picky here, Anko said. Do it, before I get too weak. He studied her for a moment before nodding. All right. I owe you this one anyway, for screwing up and leaving you alone with that guy. He formed a pair of female clones, who settled into place on either side of the injured woman. You two give her a chakra transfusion if this works, he directed. She'll need it to fuel the regeneration. I've barely got enough juice left for this, so I probably won't be good for much afterwards. Once she's stable, you'll have to get us moved somewhere safer. The girls nodded, and he rolled up his sleeve. He gathered his remaining chakra and made a long series of seals, before pausing to cut the palm of his hand with a kunai. Then he held it over the wound, letting his blood mingle with hers as he formed another series of seals one-handed. Demonic blood transformation technique, bloodline gift. Anko gasped, then screamed as tendrils of foreign blood burrowed through her veins, burning away everything they touched and rebuilding it to a subtly different pattern. The clones grabbed her limbs as the convulsion started, but it took all four of them to hold her down as the technique ran its course. A faint odor of cooked meat rose from her wound, and her skin took on a sunburned look. The scream died to a strangled whisper as the wounded Kunoichi ran out of air, her wildly spasming muscles making it impossible to breathe. Her heart fluttered erratically, and stopped beating altogether. The clones holding her arms down exchanged a panicked look. Then it started again, and Anko managed to draw a ragged gasp of air as the convulsions eased. That was too close, one of them complained. Anko choked back a sob, and concentrated on breathing. Naruto bent over to inspect the wound, which had begun bleeding again from her struggles. After a moment the bleeding stopped, and the smaller gashes left by Samahata's scales began to close. It worked, he muttered. Phew, that took even more chakra than I expected. I'm just gonna lie down. One of the male clones caught him as he started to topple, and laid him down next to their patient. The girls were already beginning their transfusion technique, and to Anko's relief the pain quickly ebbed. Soon after she was unconscious as well. The next morning Naruto awoke to find himself stretched out in a bedroll with a naked female form snuggled up against his side, and a confused jumble of memories floating about in the back of his mind. The sound of forest birds greeting the sun confirmed that he was in northern fire country, but beyond that his sleep-addled mind wasn't sure where he was. Or, to look at it another way, which of several hundred versions of the previous day's memories actually went with his current body. But he could feel that he had sentry clones out, so he wasn't too worried about it. Waking up was always confusing when he didn't have the chance to properly sort his memories before going to bed. He gave the curvaceous girl clone in his arms a friendly squeeze, and idly let his hand wander down to her hip as he tried to sort out who he was. She made an appreciative sound, but then her hand wandered south to investigate a case of morning wood that definitely shouldn't have been there. Wait a minute. I'm a guy. Why am I sleeping with a girl clone if I'm in guy form? I haven't done that since that one clone stayed a girl too long and started wanting to experiment. Not bad. Is this natural, or another of your funky transformation techniques? The voice in his ear was sultry, teasing, and definitely not one of his clones. His eyes snapped open. Anko? What are you doing? What's it feel like I'm doing? She purred as her hand began to stroke. I'm still too weak for anything acrobatic, but that's not going to stop me from thanking you for saving my ass yesterday. Much as I appreciate it, you really don't have to do that. She nipped his ear playfully. Are you kidding? There's nothing hotter than fucking your boss. Now you just relax and enjoy it, stud. Then she slid down his body to put her tongue to work. Naruto groaned at the novel sensation. Sure, he'd done plenty of experimenting as a girl during his long training trip. But the fact that his clones were still him, and therefore had decidedly mixed feelings about the idea of getting intimate with a guy, meant that this was one area where his experience was still rather lacking. After a moment, Anko came up for air, and gave him a sultry look. You never answered my question, boss. Natural or enhanced? That's all natural, Anko-chan. But I can always do a partial multi-size transformation if you need another foot or two to play with. She laughed. Sounds like fun, but you'd better wait until I can pull off elastic body techniques again. Right now I just want to show you what I can handle the old-fashioned way. She bent her head again, and this time she went all the way down. Oh God, he groaned. You're good at that. She replied happily, and he groaned again. I love sucking cock, she announced as she came up for air. Damn, it's been too long since I got to do this with someone I actually like. I hope you've got a big load saved up for me, because Anko Slut really needs her morning protein. She ran her tongue slowly up the length of his shaft, and then playfully lengthened it to 3 times its normal size and wrapped it around him. Keep that up and you're gonna get a faceful in no time, Naruto replied. Good gods, do you know how hot that is? Uh-huh. The snake mistress replied proudly as her enlarged tongue slithered up and down his organ. She eyed the object of her desire hungrily as she tasted it from every angle. But apparently that wasn't enough for the buxom vixen, as she abruptly retracted her tongue and wrapped her lips around it again. She looked up to lock her eyes with Naruto's, and then slowly lowered her lips until his entire length was engulfed in her hungry mouth. Her incredible tongue went back to work, hidden now but no less effective, as she slowly worked her way back up. When she was on the verge of releasing him again, she stopped, her tongue running teasing circles around the tip of his member. He thrust upwards with a groan, trying to get more contact, but she timed her movements perfectly to maintain her teasing position. Fuck! He grabbed her head with both hands and pushed her roughly down. Anko exclaimed excitedly, and went to work. After a minute he relaxed enough to let her bob her head up and down on his shaft, but he kept one hand in her hair and pulled her back down whenever she tried to tease him again. She seemed to like it, if her mounting enthusiasm was any clue. He was already getting close when she started to hum, and he lost it. She kept her lips firmly fastened around the base of his shaft as he emptied himself into her mouth, making appreciative noises as she greedily swallowed every spurt. Finally, when she was satisfied that he'd been milked completely dry, she released him with a happy sigh and set about licking him clean. Damn, Anko-chan, Naruto said weakly. That sex kitten act of yours isn't an act at all, is it? Nope, she replied as she squirmed her way back up his body to lie against him. I'd spend my whole life fucking and killing if I could. I wish I was up to a good pounding right now, but those broken ribs haven't quite healed yet, and my chakra's about dry. Yeah, the regeneration burns your chakra to heal you, so you won't have much until you're healthy again. Food helps a lot, so you might want to start carrying extra rations just in case. I'll give you another chakra transfusion after breakfast, and you'll probably be back to full strength tomorrow. That's a hell of a jutsu, boss. How long does it last anyway? He didn't answer. Wait, I remember the name of that technique now. Was that permanent? Yeah? I'm afraid so. You've got my regeneration bloodline for real now unless you have some kind of rejection reaction, and those usually show up within a few hours. I guess we'd better get Tsunade to give you a checkup just in case, but you should be good. Sorry there wasn't time to really talk about it. Sorry? Are you fucking kidding me? That's the most kick-ass bloodline I've ever heard of. Hurry up and heal me, so you can screw me till I can't walk. Naruto laughed. You'll probably pass out when I do it, so we'd better get some food in you first. But if you're that desperate, it'd be pretty cruel of me to leave you waiting for so long. Just don't resist any of this, and we'll get you taken care of long enough to tide you over. An invisible aura sprang up around them as his hand dipped between her thighs. Anko stiffened for a moment, then relaxed and hooked one leg over his hip to give him access. Oh. That's sort of like the old pervert's lust aura, but different. Not so grating. Yeah, well, I turn into a girl, so I know what that stuff feels like too. But it turns out being able to feel both sides of one of these techniques makes research a lot easier. I call this one affectionate embrace, because at low power it's nice and friendly and relaxing. But when I turn it up a little... Anko gasped. Her eyes dilated as the euphoria hit her, and the dampness between her thighs became a river. He slipped 3 fingers inside her and pressed them against her G-spot as he cupped her mound, the heel of his hand pressing firmly against her clit. And this one's my version of grip of ecstasy. No need to risk burning your poor clit with huge chakra pulses when I can reach everything important at the same time like this. He moved his whole hand in a complicated rhythm, sending pulses of chakra dancing between his fingers and palm. Enko jerked and bit his shoulder, instantly lost in the sensation. He used the distraction as the opening for another technique, and she released him with a sigh as she went limp. He carefully laid her out on her back, one hand on her chest while the other continued its work below. "What was that?" she slurred, barely able to talk. "Muscle relaxation technique. I'm sure you'd rather be more active, but we can't have you tearing anything up in there. So you just relax and let Dr. Uzumaki take care of all that nasty tension." Normally Enko's couplings were frantic, violent affairs born of a roiling mixture of bloodlust and desire, a state in which she was as likely to carve her partner's organs out as get him off. But this time was different. Naruto's effortless command of the situation, the intimacy of being wrapped in that impossible aura of his, the upwelling of purely sexual desire triggered by his techniques, all awakened responses she never thought she was capable of. She sighed happily, and let the sea of pure, uncomplicated bliss wash her away. Naruto was rather startled when, somewhere between her fifth and sixth orgasms, Enko's curse seal wavered into visibility and began to move. He had a moment of serious concern before he realized that it wasn't activating. No, it was unfolding. Most advanced seals were made up of hundreds, if not thousands of symbols, but competent seal masters almost always designed them to shrink into an unreadable mass when they were finished. After all, it was almost impossible to unravel a seal whose components you couldn't even see. Orochimaru's work tended to be especially paranoid in this regard, with multiple layers of booby traps and defenses against all the usual decryption techniques. That was one reason why even Tsunade and Jiraiya had never been able to remove his so-called heaven seal. Yet before his astonished eyes the outer layer of Enko's curse seal expanded into a 3-inch circle of small but perfectly readable symbols. Enko made a small sound of complaint, and he realized he'd been so distracted he'd lost his rhythm. So he called up a clone to study the seal, and forcefully turned his attention back to the task of driving his new partner out of her mind with pleasure. Back in Konoha, a pigeon that wasn't any sort of bird watched the entrance to the Hyuga compound warily. Hinata hadn't emerged for 2 days now, and he was starting to get concerned. Knowing her family, her father had probably just assigned her some stupid punishment for having the nerve to complain to him, but he really wanted to confirm with his own eyes that she was alright. He was pretty sure she had a team meeting this morning, since Kiba and Shino were already at Team 8's usual spot, but she was running late. He briefly wondered if he'd missed her, but the number of disguised clones that currently surrounded the estate made that unlikely. Oh, a skilled Hyuga might be able to pick out which innocuous animals and passing civilians were really disguised ninja, but he was pretty sure Hinata wasn't stealthy enough to sneak past him. Besides, why would she want to? Finally, a stray cat on the other side of the estate spotted the girl's familiar figure slipping out a side door, and sighed in relief. He signaled the other watchers, and went back to sunning himself. The blood clone who'd arrived from Sea Country a few hours earlier checked a bird's-eye view of her route, and picked a deserted stretch of side street halfway to the training grounds to intercept her. She stiffened when she saw him, and he stopped awkwardly a few feet away. She looked okay, but his subconscious was telling him he was missing something important. "Are you all right?" he finally asked. She swallowed, and looked away. As well as can be expected. It didn't go well. "I figured that. Guess I should have followed you in after all." Sure, he probably would have ended up fighting the whole clan, but those guys obviously needed a good ass-kicking. "No, that would have been worse. At least you're safe." He snorted. "I'm not the one who's in danger here. I'm trying not to spread this around too much, but Hinata, one of my clones, fought Itachi yesterday and won. I'm not afraid of your father. I don't know what things are really like for you in there, but if it ever gets to where you want to tell them off and walk away, you'll always have a place to go." She stared at him. "Are you serious, Naruto? I knew you were strong, but..." He nodded. "Yeah, I'm serious. He got away, but he's the one who had to run. So don't think you have to keep me out of the loop to protect me. You're my friend, and I want to help." The shy girl blinked back tears. "I wish I'd known. If only, but no, I didn't realize then what would happen. I'm sorry, Naruto, but it's too late for me." "What? What do you mean?" He looked her over again anxiously. She seemed normal enough, though her loose pants and bulky coat could certainly hide all sorts of injuries. Her new outfit was even more concealing than the one she'd worn as a genin. But surely even an ass like her father wouldn't seriously hurt his own daughter? Then he remembered that she'd worn her forehead protector around her neck the last time he'd seen her. Today she wore it on her head, and her bangs had been trimmed so they wouldn't cover it. He clenched his fists as he stared at it. They didn't. She hung her head sadly. "Yes. Hanabi is the heir now, and I have been moved to the B branch house. The cloud of killing intent that sprang up around Naruto would have killed any civilian unlucky enough to be caught in it, so it was lucky the street was mostly deserted. Someday I'm going to be Hokage, Naruto said slowly. And when that happens, this is going to stop. I don't care if I have to kill every elder in the village and break every one of the clans. My Konoha is not going to be a place where paranoid old men get to enslave their kids to hoard power. Hinata, I know you can't afford to go against that bastard now, but I swear to you I'm going to find a way to set you free. Believe it. I do, she whispered. I've always believed in you. If you find a way, I would like nothing better than to leave that place. She paused to gather her courage, and went on. Naruto, father is sure to arrange a marriage for me soon. Of course, Naruto growled. Because he hasn't fucked with you enough yet. Probably some stupid political thing to get him even more power. Not exactly, she corrected gently. Hyuga women never leave the clan, because of our bloodline. So he'll find a clanless ninja with techniques that Hyuga would find useful, and use the marriage to bring him into the clan. Naruto's eyes narrowed. Oh, really? We might be able to work with that. But first, is he still mad enough not to object if you get sent to do something really dangerous? At the moment, that man would be perfectly content to send me on a suicide mission. But that will change once his temper cools and he can walk without a limp again. Naruto stared. Once he can, oh man. Hinata, you rock. She blushed and looked away. I lost. Not for long, he replied decisively. Just hang in there for a few days. I think I can get you assigned to a mission away from the village for a while without anyone knowing I was involved, and that should give us time to figure out something more permanent. Thank you, Naruto. I shall try not to kill anyone before then. And then Stud Boy here finished kicking Kisame's ass while his clones patched me up, Enko concluded airily. She was surprisingly chipper for a woman who'd nearly died the day before, but food and a nap on the flight back had done wonders for her. You should have seen Fishface's look when all those clones unloaded on him at the same time. He must have taken 3 or 4 of those big wind attacks. What do you call that thing? Spiral wind cannon, Naruto replied. Enko was perched on the arm of his chair running her fingers through his hair, which would have been rather nice if they hadn't been in Tsunade's office. Yeah, there wasn't much left of the body. But since Itachi was using a possession technique, I think we'd better assume he was too. I agree, Tsunade put in. There was nothing at stake worth risking their lives over, so if they'd actually been there they would have pulled out long before the fight reached that point. Still, I'm impressed you did so well against them. Thanks, Tsunade. I'm still a little worried that Itachi learned more than I did from that fight, but I guess that just means I'll have to cook up more surprises for him before we meet again. Stud, you've already got more tricks than most hidden villages, Enko teased. Oh, and I think we can call this team assignment a success, boss. Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Oh? I had the impression you were too badly hurt for there to be any issues anyway. Speaking of which, you don't look like you're recovering from a near-fatal injury. After helping Stud Boy here beat 2 S-rank enemies at the same time? I was all over him as soon as I could move. But I think you finally found a guy who's man enough to handle me. One of her hands drifted inside Naruto's shirt, only to be removed and trapped behind her back a moment later. I'm glad you approve, Enko-chan, Naruto said dryly. Now do you think you could stop trying to make out with me in the Hokage's office? Otherwise I might have to call her granny again and use you as a shield. Enko pouted and pulled away as Tsunade chuckled. I'm glad things are going well. And the injury? Naruto, did you somehow get trained as a medic nin on top of everything else? Naruto and Enko exchanged an embarrassed look. No, he answered after a moment. All I've got is some basic first aid stuff, and those emergency field treatment techniques Anbu came up with for non-medics. But she was in really bad shape, and that sort of Kisame's does something to screw up normal medical techniques, so I kinda had to, use a forbidden technique to give her my regeneration bloodline. You what? Tsunade shouted. Enko hung her head in embarrassment. Sorry, boss. I know I shouldn't have gotten torn up that bad in the first place. Shut up, you. Naruto, how the hell can you be doing bloodline transfers without even being a medic nin? That's an S-rank technique, and there are only 2 or 3 people in the world who can pull it off. Naruto's face tightened. I took a shortcut. You know how sometimes really nasty summoners will contact a demon kami and bargain with it for power? I've got a variation on the technique the kami used to carry out a pact like that. You imprint some of your blood with a transformation array key to part of your own nature, plus a stupidly huge amount of chakra, and pour it into the subject. It either transforms them to have the same nature, or kills them. Good God, Naruto! Where did you learn a technique like that? Do you have any idea how dangerous that is? Yeah, I do, Naruto replied evenly. Tsunade, she had a punctured lung and major blood loss, and I was having trouble getting her stable even without moving her. She had maybe 1 chance in 3 of living long enough for me to fly her back here, and that's assuming the problems that Funky Sword caused didn't get worse. But my regeneration can handle just about anything as long as I don't run out of chakra, and I was pretty sure we had enough left between us to do the transfer and make sure she survived. It was a crappy situation, but I figured that was the best chance I could give her. Tsunade opened her mouth to argue and closed it. She sighed. You're right. If it was that bad, even a risky operation would be better than the alternative. Damn it, we've got to do something about this shortage of real medics. If you'd had someone like Shizen or Sakura with you, that wouldn't have been necessary. I know, Naruto said. Or if we'd had a full squad, there's a good chance no one would have gotten hurt badly in the first place. True, the Hokage admitted. I was hoping for more time, but if Akatsuki is already on the move, we need to get your squad assembled now. Have you thought about who you want? Besides Anko-chan? How about Hinata? Her Byakugan and recon training would be a big help, and she's so hard to hit even a serious opponent would have trouble pinning her down. For that matter, her and Anko could tag team someone like Kisame pretty well too. Tsunade wasn't thrilled with the idea of leaving Anko with him, since she'd intended that as a temporary assignment. But things seemed to be going well enough between them that she hated to separate the pair already, and leaving the special Jounin on Naruto's team might be a good way to give them the extra punch they need against high-level opponents. Of course, that meant assigning another male ninja to the team would be inadvisable. If she did, Anko would no doubt end up hospitalizing the poor guy, which wouldn't be good for anyone. Alright, she decided. You can have Hinata, but I want you to have a real medic along too. Sakura is about ready for a new team, and she's the best one we're likely to have available anytime soon. Hell, she's probably the third best in the village, behind Shizen and I. Sakura? Naruto brightened at the thought of his old teammate, but then he considered the idea of her facing someone like Kisame and frowned. I'd love to have her, but can she fight at that level now? Tsunade chuckled. Medic Nin training is more than just patching people up, kid. Her taijutsu's good, she's great at dodging, and I've taught her my strength techniques. I'm more worried about the flack I'm going to catch over sending you out with an all-female team. Don't you think he deserves his own personal kunoichi harem? Anko interjected. Don't worry, I'll be gentle when I show them the ropes. Tsunade and Naruto both rolled their eyes. If you say stuff like that around Sakura, one of us is going to get killed, Naruto complained. But about that, what if we arrange things so no one knows? If Sakura's that good, no one would be surprised if you assigned her to a secret ANBU team for a while, and I happen to know that Hayashi isn't going to object if Hinata gets drafted for a risky assignment. Meanwhile, I can have a clone pretend to be the real me on some other kind of duty. Let's see, you keep complaining about the medic Nin shortage. Now that I'm a Jounin, I've got the clearance to take over some of Shizen's grunt work, so she could have time to start training up some newbies. That's not a bad idea, Naruto, Tsunade said thoughtfully. There are 3 or 4 genin who'd make good candidates, and if we can give them regular training between missions for a few months, we might actually get somewhere. But I'm surprised to hear you volunteering to do paperwork. Hey, I have to learn to deal with it if I want to wear the hat someday, right? Besides, I was hoping I could talk you into letting me put a clone in Shizen's class. I can pretend to be a kid if I need to, and my chakra control may not be perfect, but I can spend a lot more time practicing than anyone else. Tsunade's eyes flicked to Anko and back. Even though you'll have Sakura with your team? Naruto nodded. What if Sakura's the one who gets hurt next time? Besides, I've got clones all over the place, and you never know what kind of trouble one of them might get into. I don't ever want to be in that situation again. Alright, Naruto. Come up with a cover story explaining why a genin kunoichi no one's ever heard of is taking Shizen's new medic Nin class. If she approves it, you're in. But you're going to have to stick with this for at least 6 months, okay? I know you can practice everything at once, but the other students can't, and I want this to last long enough to do them some good. Naruto agreed readily enough, but the Hokage still had concerns. If we're going to call you an ANBU team, you've got a lot to get up to speed on, and not much time. I'm sure Jiraiya covered the basics, but you'll need to know current codes and procedures, get masks and gear, that sort of thing. Anko, can you handle all of that? Sure, the assassin replied. Assuming you write us a team formation order and back whatever story we put out. But we should stay away from the rest of ANBU until we've got the whole team up to speed, or we're going to have trouble. A lot of people are going to be pissed that Naruto got promoted so fast, and they'll test us pretty hard if they get the chance. Good point. Tsunade leaned back in her chair to consider the problem. Normally ANBU recruited newly promoted chunin, putting them through a secret 6-month training program that was supposed to turn them into elite Black Ops specialists before putting them back on active duty. Privately, she wasn't impressed with the results. Naruto's antics were just the latest demonstration of how porous their security was, and when it came to actual combat, ANBU teams had an unfortunate tendency to die heroically instead of winning. But she didn't have the political capital to reform the organization at the moment, thanks to Konoha's eternal manpower crisis. Too many clan heads were convinced that the current system was working, and the village couldn't afford to waste resources fixing something that wasn't broken. So she'd left it alone for years, and that meant ANBU was still an organization everyone wanted to be a former member of. Most ninja only stayed in for 2 or 3 years, especially if they won a promotion. The few special jounin and jounin who stayed in ANBU were long-term veterans who were likely to take Naruto's promotion as a personal insult, especially if he didn't display the same specialized skills that they'd worked so hard to master. As long as Naruto's ANBU membership was just a bureaucratic technicality, they'd look the other way, but if he showed up at ANBU headquarters with a mask and a team without even going through their training course, they'd close ranks and do anything they could to undermine him. On the other hand, maybe that lack of resources wasn't such a problem anymore. It all came down to whether Naruto was really as good as he thought he was. "Naruto, how many active infiltrations do you have going on in other villages?" she asked suddenly. A lot. You really want me to give details right now? Some of them are pretty delicate, and I've only got one good shot at this. Once word gets out about what I can do, everyone's going to get a lot more paranoid about checking out their academy students and orphan recruits and stuff. I'd hate to lose my best shot at some of the secret techniques I'm after because a hint got out. Exactly the kind of answer a competent spy master would give. So you're running real missions then? Okay, how about assassinations? His eyes narrowed. I've helped Jiraiya out with quiet takedowns on Akatsuki agents a few times, and I was the inside guy on the raid that took out that sound cell up in Waterfall Country last year. Where are you going with this? Another little project I've been wanting to get to ever since I got the hat. We're going to call this experimental Team Orange. Officially you don't exist, and confidentially we'll tell ANBU you're an experimental team designed to take down S-rank opponents like Akatsuki. Our regular ANBU agents drop like flies whenever a high-level fight breaks out, so they aren't going to want anything to do with a project like that. You'll still wear masks, but you'll have a uniform that's different enough from regular ANBU that no one would confuse the two. Take tomorrow to get the details worked out, and then the day after you can collect the girls and go on a training mission. We'll keep you out of town for a couple of months, either training or on missions depending on circumstances, Tsunade continued. Naruto, you'll keep a clone with me so I can contact you quickly when we get reports of Akatsuki activity. Let me know what you need in the way of additional instructors or equipment, and I'll see what I can do. If Akatsuki is really going operational, your team's bound to have some good war stories by the time you come back to town, which should go a long way towards diffusing any remaining hostility. Anko snickered. These Akatsuki guys are out hunting Jinchuriki and Bijou, and our team's going to stop them? Yeah, no one's going to fuck with us after that. Shizen slipped quietly into her teacher's office after the pair left, and locked the door. Well? She asked. How is he? Tsunade chuckled. Apparently the little scamp has hidden depths. You know how she's always fondling any male in arm's reach? Well, when she tried it during our meeting he told her to stop, and she actually did. Oh my, Shizen exclaimed. That is something. So, he isn't having any trouble with her? I was afraid she'd find some way to trick him and well, you know how she is. Not at all. The funny thing is she actually seemed happy about it. I suppose that makes sense if you think about it though. It must be a relief to finally meet someone who can tell her no and make it stick. That's true, Shizen replied. It must have been awful for her, knowing she could lose control at any moment. Maybe she'll even discover that it's possible to have a relationship without sex being involved. We can only hope. Anko was so eager she barely remembered to disarm all of the traps as she pulled Naruto into her apartment. Come on, stud, she purred. That thing you did last time was fun, but I want to see this legendary stamina of yours in action. Anko needs a jumbo order of tube steak right fucking now. Naruto laughed as he kicked the door shut, blocking out the glare of the setting sun. If you're always in this much of a hurry, maybe you shouldn't wear that mesh bodysuit. How do you get out of that thing anyway? Anko grinned and formed a seal. Serpentine body technique. She laughed and slithered out of her mesh armor's neck hole, flipping through the air with unnaturally boneless fluidity to land back on her feet as she cancelled the technique. Ta-da! Sexy time, Anko, arriving. Okay then. That was both hot and disturbing. What is it with you and snakes anyway? They remind me of my favorite thing in the world, of course. Now are you going to get naked and do me, Or do I have to tie you up and apply some persuasion first? Anko wrapped her arms around him and idly began hitting pressure points. A pair of clones appeared from nowhere to grab her arms and pin them behind her back. Quit that, you naughty psycho girl. No special techniques, or I'll show you what mine feel like at full power. Promise? Anko replied eagerly. In a hidden cave in northern Wind Country, 8 ninja in Akatsuki robes held a hastily convened meeting. Only Deidara and Sasori were physically present, but the projections sent by the other members were more than sufficient for exchanging information. The evening's revelations had not gone over well. So, you're saying you can't do it? Deidara chortled. The great Itachi, foiled by Genin. I said that finding him will be difficult, Itachi corrected calmly. He has dozens of clones spread across the elemental countries, and attacking one will immediately alert the others. We need a technique that will allow us to find the real one. Pain considered what he knew of the Sharingan's abilities, and frowned. The original was not connected to the clones you fought? Itachi shook his head. No. He can make permanent clones somehow, and use those to anchor the temporary ones. Yeah, and his clones may only be Jounin level, but fighting that many at once is a bitch, Kisame complained. So, do any of you guys have some trick that can find the real one? No one replied. Then it can't be helped, Pain said finally. You'll have to find or create your own solution to the problem. Until then, the rest of us will need to plan our operations on the assumption that the boy could interfere at any moment. There was grumbling all around, but no one disagreed. What about the Suna operation? Deidara asked. You were supposed to be in position to block reinforcements from Konoha in a couple of days. Idiot. Obviously we need to replan the whole operation, Sasori growled. Yes, Pain confirmed. It will take time to replace those decoys, and it's apparent that they would not have been enough in any event. Contact me again when you have a new plan. Naruto spent the night. This, of course, led to another eventful morning and a bit of playful grab-ass in the shower afterwards, but over breakfast the pair finally got serious again. I'm not sure how we're actually going to set up a whole new unit in one day, Anko admitted as she rummaged in her tiny pantry. The paperwork alone could take that long. Then there's uniforms, insignia, equipment, codes, training programs, and who knows what else. Aha! She came up with a box of Pocky and fished out a stick. I knew I had some left. Naruto looked up from the stove to raise an eyebrow. You call that breakfast? Hey, I'm a busy girl. No time for messing around in the kitchen. In other words, you can't cook, Naruto guessed. Yeah, you got me. How'd you know? Your pantry looks like mine used to. I guess rice balls will have to do for now. Naruto checked the timer on the rice cooker and brought the tea he just finished making over to the table. So, do you know Shadow Clone? Anko opted to perch on the edge of the table rather than use one of the battered chairs. Sure, but I can't use it like you do. Keeping even a couple of them going would wipe me out in an hour. Warned by his companion's odd habits, Naruto checked the chairs and noted that both were trapped. Not wanting a dozen poison needles in the posterior, he decided that leaning against the wall was his safest option. I think I can help with that. I've got this technique for sharing chakra that I use to transfer energy between my clones, but I've never tried it on someone else because I'm afraid I'd accidentally transfer some of the QB's chakra too. Even the tiniest amount of that stuff would give a normal person chakra poisoning. But now that you've got my bloodline, that shouldn't be a problem, so I ought to be able to lend you chakra all day. Seriously? Anko grinned. Have I mentioned today that you're the best team leader I've ever had? I think you might have said something like that earlier, yeah, Naruto replied with a smile. But it's still good to hear. So, I figure we have a couple of clones take care of the paperwork together, then another pair can figure out the equipment issues while we think about training. Once we know what we need, I can send a bunch of guys out to run errands around town, so we can get everything done at once. Even so, we'll probably run into something that takes more than a day, but it should be close enough. You've done this a lot, Anko observed. Ooh, can I design the uniforms? Do you actually want to, or is this just an excuse to make Hinata wear fishnet? Anko pouted. Hey, I resemble that remark. They both laughed. But seriously, she went on. Gear is crucial for surviving high-rank missions, so I wouldn't screw with my teammates that way. I do think we should actually make it sexy, since we're mostly hot kunoichi and a lot of guys won't kill you if they're busy drooling over your tits. But practical is important too. I'm thinking full-body mesh armor, the fancy summon stuff that's stretchy and breathes and looks like it's painted on from a distance. No rigid armor for us, that crap slows you down, and it won't stop anything serious anyway. Lots of pouches for tools, shuriken, kunai, wire, explosive tags, gas grenades, maybe some summoning scrolls if we can get them. I know a place that makes custom WUD gear, so we can work out a standard loadout and then let everyone customize it. This is already sounding expensive, Naruto objected. Tsunade is not going to be happy if we get carried away. Like she's going to send us after Akatsuki with Chunin grade gear? Please. Let's see, add chakra forged steel bracers for parrying, and good boots of course. A long coat so we don't have to burn chakra on cold resistance in foul weather, but no backpacks. We need to be able to move fast, and anyway we should all be able to use storage scrolls for stuff like tents and supplies. The rice cooker dinged, and Naruto moved back to the kitchen. It sounds like you've thought this through, he called over his shoulder. But you're talking at least 40,000 ryo per person, so I'd love to hear how you're going to talk Granny into paying for it. Oh, and not everyone is an exhibitionist, so let's at least give them the option of another layer over it. There you go, spoiling all my fun again. It was a busy morning even with a dozen clones at work, but fortunately Naruto's chakra link technique worked more or less as expected. Most of the chakra he tried to loan his partner was lost in the process, probably due to differences between their chakra signatures. But even so, it was no strain at all to keep her topped off while she maintained a half-dozen clones, and their organizational work went quickly. Enko was a little put out when Naruto vetoed her plan to talk Tsunade into paying for the fancy armor she wanted, but he'd had a better idea. But boss, we need this stuff, she protested. We can't send the kids out without armor or they're gonna die the first time we run into some guy who uses poison. I know it's expensive, but if we go with the ANBU stuff instead it'll slow them down too much. I know, Naruto reassured her. I'm not saying I don't want armor, and you're totally right about the mobility issue. I just realized we've got a better option. What? Enko asked suspiciously. I haven't heard of anything better, and I do have a few contacts. Oh, just a little something my clones up in Snow Country have been involved in. Trust me, you'll like it. I'm not exactly the trusting type, boss, Enko complained. But I guess you can be mysterious if you want. Just make sure we've got it soon, so we can have the newbies train with it. I'm pretty sure they'll both need time to adjust to anything they're not used to. By lunchtime the paperwork was largely finished, the new team's basic gear was on order, and they'd decided to dump the issue of private codes and signaling techniques on Sakura once she was on board. As Naruto pointed out, there was no sense in having a brainiac on your team if you didn't make use of her. Unfortunately, they were both starving by then, so the choice of dining location for lunch was a bit more contentious. Dango. Ramen. Dango. No way, ramen is best. Fuck that, nothing beats Dango. Fine, you get Dango, I'll get ramen. I'll meet you at Graining Ground 17 in an hour. But eventually they found a satisfactory resolution. After stuffing themselves separately, the troublesome pair eventually found their way to the training grounds for their daily dose of recreational violence. Naruto was a few minutes late, having taken the opportunity to catch up on recent memory updates from his other clones. After discovering the details of Hinata's plight, he was definitely ready to blow something up. He found Enko sitting on a fence post at the edge of the training ground with a wicked-looking combat knife in hand. As he approached, she cut her finger, paused, licked the blood off, and giggled maniacally. "This is so fucking cool," she exclaimed as she noticed him. She cut her finger again, and focused chakra into the wound. The shallow cut immediately closed back up, and she licked her finger clean again. "This is the most kick-ass trick ever. I can hardly wait to surprise some with it in a real fight." Naruto rolled his eyes. "You really are a psycho, you know that?" "Oh, this from the guy who can't even spar without dying a few hundred times?" Enko shot back. "You know, the other Jounin all think you're nuts because of the way you use Shadow Clone." "You get used to it," he said with a shrug. "Dying is not something you're supposed to do so much you get used to it." She frowned. "Hey, what's eating you? I thought we had our shit squared away." "I'm just worried about Hinata. When we were talking to Tsunade, I knew there was another reason I wanted her with us, but I hadn't had a chance to sort out the details yet. I can't believe her father put a caged bird seal on her." "Oh. Yeah, the Hyuga are like that. Personally, I never saw why the Hokage lets them get away with that crap, but what do I know? I guess we'd have to kill a bunch of old geezers to make them stop, but people get all bent out of shape when I ask why that's a problem." Enko idly balanced the knife point first on her fingertip. "It may come to that, actually. But I have to get Granny to go along with whatever I do, and I'm not sure how to pull that off yet." "Well, if we get to clean house, count me in. I've been wanting to knife some of those smug-ass for years." She flipped the knife into the air and hopped off the post while dusting her hands off. A moment later, the blade dropped cleanly into its sheath at her hip, and she laid a hand on the hilt. So, what are you thinking for training? Naruto almost smiled at the casual display of skill. This was going to be a great team. Well, I've thought of a bunch of tricks we could work on, and I still want to pick your brain later for ideas on what to do with Hinata and Sakura. But considering your fire attacks and my wind jutsu, there's one thing it would just be a crime not to get down right away. Enko grinned. Combination attacks? I like the sound of that. You just do that aura thing and I'll be right in tune with you, stud. Only I think we're going to need a bigger training ground. Or we could try it with small jutsu first, Naruto corrected. Sport, his companion pouted. Okay, I guess we can stick with piddly little stuff for now. Their first few tries were more comedic than menacing, but in less than an hour the pair were successfully combining Enko's fireball with Naruto's windstorm to flash fry a good-sized patch of the rocky field. Then they tried Grand Fireball with Great Cutting Whirlwind, and the resulting firestorm nearly filled the training ground. Woohoo! Enko shouted with glee. That's more like it. Let's try it with something bigger. I think the Aburame might get pissed if we spill over the boundary and burn down half their clan compound, Naruto replied. Is it just me, or is this going a lot easier than normal? The aura thing really does help. So does the sex, for that matter. There's no one easier to sync with than a guy you just did the nasty with. If so, say so, Psycho-chan. Well, I think we've got the massive damage category covered here. What do you have that might work for a tight, high-penetration type attack? Tight penetration's your job, stud, Enko shot back with a cheery grin. Unless that's a hint for me to pull out the old strap-on. Naruto rolled his eyes, and she stuck her tongue out at him. Okay, seriously? That's hard to do with fire attacks. Maybe if you throw your spiral wind cannon, and I feed a fire dragon in a split second later? Right, and then Tsunade makes us pay for all the buildings we blew up. Let's try it with a fireball first, and see how big the blast comes out. At first Sakura was excited when Tsunade told her that she was being put back on active duty. That was tantamount to saying she'd finally completed her long apprenticeship, and she was thrilled at the confirmation of her teacher's faith in her abilities. But nothing that came after that made any sense. Her teacher refused to give her any details about her new team or assignment, maintaining that it was classified and she'd find out when she met her new team leader. But then she said Sakura should expect to be in the field for a month or two, which didn't add up. The only assignments that would be that classified were a long-term infiltration or ANBU, and as far as she knew Konoha didn't actually use sleeper agents anymore. But ANBU recruits always started with their 6-month training course, and besides she was pretty sure their next class wasn't due to start until after the Chunin exam. So she packed for a long field mission, but put her camping gear and spare clothing into storage scrolls where it wouldn't be in the way if she found herself in a training camp instead. Weapons, first aid supplies and a few exploding tags would do for most assignments, and if she needed more she could always unpack it. After a bit of thought she also sealed up her medical references, extra medical supplies, a plentiful supply of paper and ink, a few carefully selected volumes on codes and seals, and the Konoha bingo book she'd only recently been issued. She was even more puzzled the next morning, when she showed up at the appointed meeting room in the Hokage's tower to find Hinata already waiting there. She couldn't imagine the shy girl being picked to join ANBU, but it was equally unlikely that they were both being assigned to the same team. The one kunoichi per team limit was almost universally enforced in Konoha, for the rather sensible reason that the village had 4 times as many male ninja as females. Sakura stopped in the doorway to study the Hyuga girl for a moment before asking, "You're here for a team assignment too?" Hinata nodded. "Yes." "Huh. I don't suppose you have any idea what's going on." Hinata shrugged. "No. But now that you're here, perhaps ANBU-san will tell us." "Who?" Sakura set her pack down and looked around suspiciously. Hinata's Byakugan hadn't looked active, but that didn't mean as much as the uninformed might think. The Hyuga had a whole array of special techniques for manipulating their bloodline's behavior, from partial activation to masking genjutsu. And speaking of genjutsu, she was picking up faint traces of an invisibility technique. She focused her awareness, locking onto the hint of a third presence in the room. Right there, on the ceiling. Dispel. The genjutsu cleared to reveal a purple-haired woman in an ANBU uniform, who dropped gracefully to the floor and clapped. "Not bad, you two. Maybe you really will be up to this assignment." "That would be encouraging if we had any idea what this assignment is, ma'am," Sakura replied. "I don't suppose we get to find out yet?" She noticed that the woman's mask didn't fit the usual ANBU animal motif. Instead it was an oni. Yes, a snarling demon face, with a prominent orange slash on one cheek. Interesting. The older woman chuckled. What, here in Spy Central? Do you realize how many people are listening in on this? I have 3 definite spies and more than a dozen possibles, Hinata answered softly. Exactly. This place is a prime target for anyone who wants to know what's going on in the village, so there's no point in trying to keep anything secure here. Unless you're going to get really exotic with security seals, it's a lost cause, and none of us are going to be putting up an array like the one on the Hokage's office anytime soon. Stick close and keep an eye out for tails, and let's hit the road. There wasn't much to say to that, so Sakura held her peace while the small party made their way across town and out the west gate. They took to the trees almost immediately, and half a mile later she was pretty sure they weren't being followed by anything more substantial than random insects. If their leader was going to be paranoid, they might as well be thorough about it. Besides, it might make a good impression. Hinata, can you check us for tracking bugs? Sakura asked as they crossed another fast-moving stream. The Hyuga girl blinked in surprise, then nodded. Yes. I should have thought of that. Sakura expected her to call a halt, but she simply activated her Byakugan and shifted her head back and forth a bit. Then she reached back to pluck an insect off the back of her own coat and held it up to examine it. She released it with a hint of a smile, and it flew back towards Konoha. One of Shino's? Sakura guessed. Yes, Hinata replied. Then her hand flashed out to pluck something off Sakura's jacket. But this one isn't. I was wondering when you notice, the A&B woman called back. Kill it and keep on. Hinata, do another check every mile or so until we're well away from town. Oh, and I guess we can lose the other tail now too. A kunai flashed through the air to impale a crow that had just landed on a nearby branch. To Sakura's surprise, the bird immediately dissolved into a pool of ink. Ma'am, are we just having a bad day, or is whatever we're up to attracting a lot of interest? Or maybe the whole situation was a test of some kind, but she wasn't going to come out and say that. Welcome to Black Ops, kid, the A&B replied. Every time we take a piss, the whole village wants to know about it. They'll back off now that they know we're not all rookies, though. There's nothing harder to follow without being spotted than a fast-moving party of ninja, and no one's going to risk getting caught over a little random curiosity. Come on. She picked up the pace after that, and the younger kunoichi found themselves hard-pressed to keep up. They crossed the rest of the Konoha security zone and cut across a wide stretch of farmland beyond, leaving a trail of startled peasants in their wake as they bounded across the open fields at 40 miles per hour. Then they were back in unsettled lands, ghosting through the endless miles of hilly forest that made up most of northern Fire Country. They'd put another 100 miles behind them by the time noon approached, and their leader finally slowed as she made her way into the mouth of a remote valley. She stopped on a branch with a clear view of the valley floor, and scanned the area carefully before turning to face her companions. Okay girls, time for your final clue check. How do you know I'm not an infiltrator who lured you out here to take you prisoner? Sakura, you first. Sakura frowned and extended her senses. It was a little late for games like this, but she'd play long. You knew where and when to meet us, so you've got inside information on classified missions. I checked the security seal on your mask before we left the tower, and it matches the ID Sensei told me to expect. Hinata recognizes you, so you're not an infiltrator who murdered our contact and stole her mask. So unless you're an S-rank genjutsu master, you're really the person we're supposed to be meeting, which means we're good unless you're a long-term sleeper agent. And if you are, you're about to get the surprise of your life, because I feel Naruto's chakra somewhere nearby. So the Hokage taught you to read security seals? I am her apprentice, Sakura pointed out. She was very thorough in her instruction. Good, we can use that. Hinata, your turn. Yes, Anko-san. The security seal and identity, of course. Also, I've read most of the documents in your storage scrolls as we've traveled, including our mission orders. I'm fairly confident that there are no genjutsu masters who could create such an illusion. Sakura whistled. You can read rolled-up documents inside a storage scroll space fold, while moving? I knew you were good at recon, Hinata, but I had no idea you were that good. Why aren't you a jounin already? I haven't asked, Hinata replied. And I can, but peering through warp space gives me a terrible headache. I try not to unless it's necessary. Anko chuckled. I'll bet. But I could still be a sleeper agent. Your seal isn't active, and you died before you betrayed the village of your own will, Hinata disagreed. Besides, Naruto is here. Anything he's involved in is something I'd join willingly. Ah, isn't that sweet? Reminds me of when I was your age, Anko said as she removed her mask. What about you, Pinky? If Naruto was organizing a revolution, would you sign up? Sakura opened her mouth to deny the ridiculous accusation, but then she realized she was looking at the question backwards. Naruto is probably the most loyal person I've ever met, so I'd have to say anything that could convince him to turn would probably convince me too. But Tsunade-sensei would say the same thing, and it's not a rebellion if the Hokage is in on it. Heh. Good one, I'll have to remember it. Alright girls, listen up because this is your last chance to back out. You're about to join a new experimental unit called Team Orange, which is going to be like A and BU except that we actually win fights. Our mission is to stop a group of S-rank ninja called Akatsuki, who apparently want to conquer the world by cornering the market on Bijou. That means we either kill a bunch of guys who think they're tough enough to take on Bijou and Jinchuriki, or we take out their targets ourselves before they can get to them. Obviously we aren't going to do this alone, but since we're the only team Konoha has with an S-rank fighter, we're gonna be the ones doing the heavy lifting. So you know how everyone always says we're good as long as we're not up against an S-rank such and such, and what are the odds of that? Well, on this team that's exactly what we're up against every day of the week. So in between missions we're going to train night and day, we're going to dredge up every cheap power-up and dirty trick we can get our grubby little hands on, and we're never going to get complacent about thinking we know what our enemies can and can't do. I figure by the time this fight's over we're either going to be the most badass motherfuckers in the elemental countries, or we're all going to be 6 feet under. Assuming there's anything left to bury, which come to think of it isn't likely. Anyone have a problem with that? I don't back down that easy, Anko, Sakura growled. Sensei thinks I can do this. I'm in. Hinata licked her lips and took a deep breath. Naruto needs me. She thought eagerly. I can help with this. I accept this assignment. Good, Anko said. Then let's go meet the boss. Do either of you have an elemental manipulation yet? Naruto asked briskly. For that matter, what are your affinities? Water. I taught myself the leaf exercise, but father didn't approve of a Hyuga learning elemental techniques. Sakura was so dazed that she barely noticed Hinata's soft response. Naruto was their team leader? Naruto. Sure, he was powerful, but since when did he have the brains to run an elite ninja team? Well, it's not up to him anymore, Naruto said firmly. With your control, it's a crime you don't have more ninjutsu to work with. I can show you some simple mist techniques that'll probably double your combat power, and hardly take any chakra at all. How about you, Sakura? She started. Fire, and it took me about 5 minutes to get the manipulation down. But I don't have enough chakra to do anything significant with it, so I've been training taijutsu and Tsunade's strength technique instead. The blonde ninja nodded. Makes sense. How about genjutsu? Kakashi always thought you were a natural at that, and it doesn't rely on raw power. His uniform was mostly black, with orange stripes down the sleeves and an orange flame pattern on his long coat. With his confident expression and businesslike manner, he reminded her of the pictures she'd seen of the fourth Hokage. Sakura dragged her attention back to the conversation again. After that mission we did in Moon Country, I did a lot of training on counter techniques, and I can see through just about anything at this point. But I've never had time to get good at creating illusions. I've picked up a few basic techniques, but they aren't going to work on the kind of enemy we're worried about. Yeah, that's what I thought, Naruto replied. Okay, we can work this. I'm sure you're both wondering by now what kind of training we're going to do that would actually make a difference against S-rank opponents, right? Both the younger girls nodded, and even Anko looked a bit interested. He chuckled as he went on. Right. It took you years to work your way up to Chunin level, and Anko's been a special jounin for almost 5 years now. It's not like any of you have been slacking off either, so how is a few weeks here going to give you a big improvement? The answer to that starts with an easy question. Why is it that we've all spent so many years training in things like taijutsu and stealth, when anyone with decent chakra control could learn a whole school of simple battle techniques in a couple of months? Anko snorted. If that's all you've got, you might as well be a samurai. You need stealth and awareness to even find a real enemy, and without the taijutsu any genin can take you down with one hit. Naruto nodded. Exactly. Jiraiya always said your basic skills are like a foundation, and they've got to be solid before you can build anything on them. So we all spend most of our time studying this stuff that's so deep it takes years to get anywhere at it. Taijutsu, medical techniques, puppet techniques, genjutsu, the list just goes on and on. Then we finally get decent at the stuff we're specializing in, and our sensei shows us a few handy ninjutsu that build on that. It works out pretty well, but I've noticed something interesting in the last few months. He leaned back against one of the massive trees that covered the valley, and put his hands behind his head. I've had dozens of clones infiltrating all sorts of groups lately, and they've learned a lot of techniques, including a lot of secret stuff. When I started putting it all together, it hit me that just about every major group of ninja in the elemental countries has some kind of powerful, easy-to-learn technique they use as a force multiplier. But for every group it's a different technique. Sakura frowned. I don't get it. I mean, sure, I see what you're saying, but what does that have to do with us? It matters because I've actually been learning their stuff, Naruto explained. And force multipliers stack. Take Hinata, for example. She's already pretty tough in close combat, and between her speed and defensive techniques she can usually get past an enemy's ranged attacks so she can fight them hand to hand. Now imagine if we give her Zabuza's mist techniques, some poison gas attacks and immunity to the poison shuriken that don't make sound as they pass through the air, and a clone technique that hardly takes any chakra at all to use. At that point even someone like Kakashi or Guy would have to work pretty hard to beat her, right? Hinata blushed and looked away. I don't think I'm quite that good, and Naruto. No, he's right, Sakura disagreed. That would be a tough combination to beat. So the plan is you steal all these techniques and figure out which ones are easy to learn, and we each pick up a whole set of complementary jutsu and special gear? That's one part of it, Naruto agreed. Another is the clone squads I'm going to assign each of you, and all the cool tricks they can pull. A hawk swooped out of the sky towards their position, and the three kunoichi reflexively took cover. Naruto just waved. Ah, and here comes part 3. The bird landed on the ground in front of him, and blurred into another Naruto. Uzumaki delivery service, he caroled. Someone order a bacon of Wu-Pass? Yeah, that's us, the one who'd been lecturing confirmed. Great. Here you go. The messenger produced a large storage scroll and handed it over with a flourish. Kick some ass for me, everyone. The messenger dispelled himself with only a faint wisp of smoke, and Sakura crept out from behind the tree where she'd taken cover. What's that? Naruto grinned as he began unrolling the scroll. Remember those guys we fought up in Snow Country a few years ago? The ones with the fancy chakra-powered armor that made them tougher than us, even though they were actually pretty wimpy as ninja? Yes, of course. But I thought the seal masters who created all that equipment disappeared? Sakura asked. Yuki-chan tracked them down a few months later. It turns out they were afraid they'd get executed for working for the wrong side, but we straightened that out. Snow Country doesn't have a real hidden village, so their ninja need all the help they can get. He released the seal, and a large pile of fabric and mechanical-looking odds and ends appeared in a puff of smoke. Most of it was unidentifiable, but the glassy blue power storage crystals were hard to miss. Sakura gasped. Chakra armor. You talked the Snow Queen into letting us use it? Sure did. This isn't that crappy prototype stuff we fought before either. I've been working with the seal masters up there for the last 6 months, powering their arrays for them and showing them what makes sense for real ninja. We solved that stupid feedback problem that made the old suits blow up if they ran into each other, got rid of the bulky metal plates, even replaced those silly pop-out bat wings with a real flight jutsu. They can fly? Anko shrieked and clapped her hands. Yes. Yes. I've always wanted to fly. Yeah, Naruto scratched his head, a little nonplussed at the manic kunoichi's reaction. It boosts your strength and speed a good bit too. But the main point is the armor effect. The suit's covered with a special seal array that projects a wall of hard chakra when it's energized. It won't stop a really good armor-piercing jutsu, but none of your normal elemental attacks are going to penetrate it. Even a fire dragon just slides off. Hinata fingered the silky material thoughtfully. I'm surprised Snow Country would lend this kind of military technology to Konoha. Naruto's expression turned serious. They didn't. That's one thing we all need to be clear on. Yuki-chan loaned these suits to me, personally, not to Konoha. They're for team use only, and I've agreed to do whatever it takes to make sure they don't get stolen and reverse-engineered by anyone else. So if we're ever in town and some ANBU or council member tries to tell you to hand over your suit, call for backup and tell him no. We report directly to the Hokage anyway, so there's no one else in the village who can give you orders about that. Clear? They all agreed, with varying degrees of bemusement. Great. Then let's get you all fitted. Naruto had to smile at the enthusiasm that statement generated. Anko was pumped over the prospect of being able to fly, and Sakura had fought chakra armor before, so she knew exactly how big a power-up a good suit could be. Hinata was more reserved, but he could tell she was intrigued. Unfortunately, the new suits had to be very precisely tailored to their wearers, and while he'd been able to give the Snow Country armorers a pretty good idea of his team's measurements, he was stuck doing the fine adjustments in the field. Even with a 3-man clone team dedicated to each girl, it was a couple of hours before the suits were ready. There were also a few awkward moments along the way. Anko thought nothing of stripping down to her panties in the middle of the forest to get her suit fitted, but Naruto knew better than to expect Sakura or Hinata to do the same. So he'd had his clone bring down a set of leotards along with the armor, and he started by handing them over, as he explained the fitting process. Sakura fingered the thin material dubiously. Are you sure this is really necessary? I don't remember the suits we fought being that tight. Actually, the undersuits were, you just couldn't tell because they had all those layers of armor on top of them, Naruto answered. There's a seal array built into the inside of the suit that has to be aligned just right along all your chakra pathways, or the suit's movements can get out of sync with yours and throw you off. I know you and Hinata both use speed-oriented taijutsu, so your suit alignment needs to be as close to perfect as I can get it. Anko frowned. Does that mean I can't use elastic body techniques while I'm wearing this stuff? Nah, that's why everything is made of these special chakra-reactive materials. Once you've worked with it for a few days, this stuff takes on your chakra nature, and after that it might as well be part of your body as far as techniques go, Naruto grinned. You'll want to go slow at first, but you should get the hang of it pretty quick. Just don't try to warp the storage crystal. Yeah, that sounds like it would be bad. Anko noticed the younger kunoichi still hesitating over their leotards and rolled her eyes. Oh, grow up you two. If you think we're going to do serious ops together, and never see each other naked, you need to get your heads on straight. Shit happens. That doesn't mean we need to go out of our way to make it happen, Sakura shot back. You can strip down in the middle of the woods if you want. I brought a tent. I'll set it up, and Hinata and I can change there. Fine, whatever. Just get to it, I want to try this out. Naruto was very careful not to stare when Sakura emerged from her tent some minutes later wearing nothing but the thin black leotard. Well, the clones in front of her didn't stare. The trio waiting to do Hinata's fitting took a good, long look while she posed for her measurements. So beautiful. The team leader thought longingly to himself. Why couldn't I be the one you wanted? But at least I've grown up enough to admit that I'm not. I'll find Sasuke for you, no matter what it takes. But he damned well better appreciate what he's got waiting for him when I do, because if he hurts you like that again, I'm going to kill him. Then Hinata hesitantly emerged from the tent, and he nearly swallowed his tongue. Good gods, is that what she was hiding under that coat? She's as stacked as Anko, and I think she might be in even better shape than my girl clones. Hiding a body like that is a crime against all mankind. Wait, how the hell am I going to fit her armor without getting turned on enough to set off her seal? Apparently Hinata was having similar thoughts, because she blushed and covered herself as best she could with her slender arms. How are we going to do this? The clone looked away. Do you mind if we go, girl? I know it creeps Sakura out when I do that, but it would make it easier. A little. Hinata bit her lip and looked away. I don't mind. Alright then. Girl clones and chakra strings, so we don't have to actually touch anything. My god, you're beautiful. Wait, did I say that part out loud? He babbled. She giggled. Thank you, Naruto. Now focus. Think of wrinkly old people. The clones all chuckled as they transformed. Chuji's used underwear, one suggested. Akamaru's, but another replied. Where does Shino keep his insects? Hinata added. All three clones turned green. Yeah, that did it. Let's get to work. 2 hours later, the three kunoichi stood in one of the small clearings near the valley floor, looking each other over as Naruto charged their armor. How can something that covers your whole body be so revealing? Sakura complained. Her armor consisted of a black body stocking that felt smooth as silk on the inside, and covered her from the neck down. The suit was actually 2 layers of specially treated fabric with a 1/4 inch of some strange fibrous material between them, so it should have been hot, and at least somewhat concealing. But the material molded itself against her like a second skin, and the way it bonded with her chakra let it transmit sensations as if it really were a part of her body. She was sure the fact that she could feel the slightest breeze blowing over the surface of the suit would be handy someday, but at the moment it felt an awful lot like being naked. The chest area was a bit thicker than the rest of the suit, with a lens-shaped chakra storage crystal just below her breasts in front and a pair of small metal plates over her shoulder blades in the back. Over that she wore snug boots and gloves of the same material, and a tight harness with dozens of attachment points for equipment pouches and weapon sheaths. That part seemed practical enough, although she was a bit amused by the steel plates over the knuckles of her gloves. No one else had those. The final piece was a headband of the same chakra-reactive material, which had a radio headset attached. She noted with interest that there was a lightning nature elemental chakra conversion array on the inner surface, attached to a power line that seemed to connect to the radio. I'm guessing we don't have to worry about batteries for the radios? She asked. Nope, Naruto answered proudly. I added that one myself. Sergei and Vanner have all kinds of crazy ideas about fancy helmets with about 1,000,000 gadgets in them, but the only thing we've actually got working right now is the radios. I remember Tenten telling me about how her team is always running out of those weird batteries their tactical sets use, so I worked out a way to power them directly from the suit's chakra reserve. They'll run as long as the suit has power, and the suit's powered by its wearer. So as long as you're not in total chakra exhaustion, you've got instant communication with about a 10-mile range. That's some nice seal work, boss, Anko commented as she stretched and twisted experimentally. But if the suit runs off its wearer, how come you need to charge them up? Because the suit keeps its drain rate really low to make sure it doesn't wear you out or interfere with your techniques, so it would take about a week to completely charge it up that way. There's a technique for pushing chakra in faster, which is what I'm using, but these things can hold more than all three of you together could generate in one sitting. So hold still a minute while I get you charged up. Naruto put one hand on her suit's crystal and formed a seal with the other, and a faint blue aura sprang up around them both. Hinata watched the proceedings with interest. At first she'd been mortified by the suits. Sakura was right about how revealing they were, and she'd always taken pains to conceal her figure as much as possible. But ever since she'd come out of the tent, Naruto kept looking at her. Oh, he tried not to stare, but she kept catching him at it when he thought she couldn't see. Silly man, as if she needed to strain her Byakugan just to see behind her. She stepped back and did a few stretches as she waited for her turn, and 3 of the clones on sentry duty back beyond the tree line stopped to stare. She couldn't help but smile at that. Naruto thinks I'm pretty, she gloated silently to herself. He's looking at me just as much as Anko, or even Sakura. She just knew people would stare at her in the suit, and she hated being stared at. But if it meant Naruto would look at her like that, it was worth it. She listened to his explanation of how to channel chakra through the suit properly with half an ear, as most of her reveled in the attention. The fact that Anko was looking too was a little awkward, but Hinata wasn't terribly surprised. The special jounin did have that kind of reputation, after all. In a way it was flattering, although she was glad Naruto was around to make sure the crazy woman didn't try anything improper. When Anko's suit was charged, she immediately went bounding across the field, laughing like a lunatic, while a Naruto clone followed along offering advice. Sakura opted to begin with a series of kata, slowly working her way up from simple forms to more complex ones as she adjusted to the suit's effect on her chakra. Then it was Hinata's turn. Naruto put a hand on her storage crystal to start the power transfer, then slowly backed away once the process was started. Which was just as well, since it was hard to control her reactions when she was actually inside that massive aura of his. Power flowed into the suit, and Hinata discovered that it was almost like having her own chakra reserves expanded. She was getting stronger, faster, a shell of tough but flexible armor forming between her and the outside world. She tugged at it, and found she could even draw a trickle of power from the suit back into her own chakra system, replenishing the energy she'd burned on the long run from Konoha. The suit's chakra was warm and friendly, almost like... Wait a minute. Naruto, why doesn't the suit set off my seal? She asked quietly. He frowned in confusion. Why would it? It isn't even human. But it's filled with your chakra, isn't it? Normally I can hardly stand within arm's reach of you. But the suit is filled with chakra, touching me everywhere, she blushed. Even mixing its chakra with mine. So why hasn't the seal activated? Because it isn't really my chakra anymore by the time it starts circulating through the suit, Naruto explained. You know how everyone has a different chakra signature, right? Well, a suit has one too, and it's the storage crystal that creates it. When I feed power into the crystal, it absorbs just the raw energy, without any of the emotional undertones and personal markers human chakra always has. Then when it feeds power to the suit, it comes out with the crystal's signature. Once you've been wearing it a few days, the crystal's signature will start changing to match your own, but it starts out with this really weird artificial one that doesn't look anything like a person. But you may be onto something, he continued thoughtfully. Since the seal doesn't react to constructs, there might be a way to make one that can remove it safely. He trailed off, staring into space. Hinata waited patiently, but after a moment he shook his head. That's going to be tough. I'd have to imprint the whole removal process on a storage crystal somehow, or control it indirectly without letting it take on a human signature. I'll put some guys on it, but I'm not sure if I can actually get it to work or not. The girls spent most of the afternoon getting acclimated to the suits, learning to use their less complicated techniques while taking advantage of the physical enhancements their armor granted. Anko insisted on trying out the flight function, and Sakura found herself amazed once again at the level of seal mastery that had gone into the suits. In flight mode, long oval wings of blue chakra were projected from those bits of metal on the back of the suit, catching the updraft produced by a tightly focused wind jutsu and providing lift. Unfortunately, it was a bit tricky to control. Anko managed to crash 4 times in a row before she got the hang of it, and finally pulled off a slow, wobbling flight across one of the larger clearings. Even then, her landing was only semi-successful. Not being adrenaline junkies with a regeneration bloodline, Sakura and Hinata both opted to finish mastering the armor's less complicated functions before trying anything that ambitious. As the sun lowered towards the horizon, Naruto called a halt to the afternoon's training, and the group gathered around a large patch of cleared ground where a team of clones were finishing up 3 large seal arrays. Each array formed a circle 8 feet across with a large blank area in the middle, and the 3 designs were apparently identical. Okay, last important point about the suits for today, Naruto said as they gathered around the seals. Getting in and out quickly. Obviously you don't want to go through that whole fitting process every time you want to armor up, but you also can't go around in full gear all the time. I went back and forth with the armorers a long time about this one, but we came up with a pretty cool solution. Anyone want to guess what it is? Animate the suit, and have it go soft and slip itself on or off. Anko guessed. Nope. Sergei suggested that, but we couldn't make it work without making it too fragile. Anyone else? A storage seal? Hinata offered. Naruto grinned. Getting closer. But you'd have to wear some kind of jewelry or something with the storage seals, and it could get lost or stolen. Sakura? The pinkette was studying the seals on the ground intently and muttering to herself. That's a blood-binding 8-fold chakra link, right, an essence imprint, and a dismissal? But what, suddenly she gasped, it's a summoning contract. We each imprint our essence on our armor with blood and chakra, and it becomes a summon that we can call up or dismiss at will. Naruto, that's amazing. Naruto's grin widened considerably. That's our resident genius. Yeah, you got it in one. Want to go first? Naruto briefed the girls on the camp's traps and sentry positions over dinner, and led them all to their hidden shelters as darkness settled over the valley. From the outside, each shelter was just a small hole in the hillside, hidden by nearby thickets and camouflaged with a leaf net over the entrance. Even skilled ninja weren't likely to find them without a long and arduous search. On the inside, each shelter was a good bit roomier than a normal 2-man tent, with plenty of space to store spare gear and supplies. The inner surfaces had been fused into solid stone with an earth technique, and covered with seal arrays to hide the chakra signatures of anyone inside. Between the concealed positions and the clones on sentry duty above, they'd be safer here than in their own beds back in Konoha. But Sakura noted with suspicion that there were only 2 shelters, and Naruto was apparently planning to share one with Anko. An afternoon of training had been more than enough time to make the special Jounin's exhibitionist tendencies clear, so she could hardly let that slide. Naruto, you'd better not be planning what I think you're planning, she said peevishly. Only 2 shelters? Naruto just looked confused, but Anko took the opportunity to wrap her arms around him from behind and rest her head on his shoulder. What's the matter, little girl? She purred. Afraid of the competition? What? No, Sakura sputtered. But putting you 2 together is just asking for trouble. Oh, so you want me all to yourself? Anko teased. I don't know, Pinky. I'm game, but do you really think you can handle me? That's not what I meant. God, what kind of sick pervert are you? Sakura shouted, her face turning red. You have no idea, little girl, Anko shot back. But you'd better watch it or you just might find out. What the hell is that supposed to mean? No, on second thought I don't want to know. But you'd better keep your hands to yourself if you want to keep them in one piece. Sakura clenched her fist, but suddenly Naruto was between them. That's enough, you 2. You're supposed to be teammates, in case you've forgotten, and on this team that actually means something. He frowned at them both. Anko was instantly contrite. Sorry, boss. You're right, I shouldn't be pushing her buttons like that. I'll try to control it better. Sorry, kid,